The time has come. The video that I have been hyping up on this channel and on my live streams, if any of you guys have paid attention, is here. And it is my top 25 greatest fighters of all time. This is my GOAT list. I settled for top 25 because I didn't want to put 30 in there. It would have made the video 2 hours long. This one might even be 2 hours long. I don't know yet. And I didn't want to do top 20 because, then I'd be leaving some important people out on the GOAT list. And I just wanted to give you guys a wider view of who I think the greatest fighters of all time are. And, this ain't going to be your grandma's GOAT list either. Like, this ain't going to be Anderson Silva, number 3, GSP, number 2, John Jones, number 1. It's not going to be anything like that. This is going to be based on this criteria right here. I have a set up criteria right here, and it's pretty simple. But we're going to go more in depth into it as the video continues. UFC wins. And this goes to like quantity of win. How many wins do you have? And then there's the quality of wins. This should probably be a sub tab to that. I wonder if I can do that. Yeah. Quality of wins as well. And the quality of wins is like, for example, on Anderson Silva, and we'll talk about Anderson Silva in this video. Don't think I left Anderson Silva off my top 25. I'm not that crazy, but you'll see where I have him on this list. For example, like an Anderson Silva win of like Vitor Belfort. That doesn't stack up to a Sean Strickland win of Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion. In like the middleweight GOAT conversation, that's just what I think. The quality of wins nowadays are much different. Yes, the sport has evolved. You're a casual if you think that Anderson Silva's win over Forrest Griffin is more, is more worth, has more worth. Oh my gosh, guys, has more worth than Strickland's win over Adesanya. Even Strickland's win over Cannonier is better than Silva's win over Forrest Griffin. I mean, come on, Forrest Griffin, bro. And then also, another notable criteria is UFC losses. How many UFC losses do you have? Who have you lost to? When have you lost to them? Also, when are your UFC wins? Like, for example, I won't include like some fighters' wins in my best wins category of how I rank them. I'm gonna give you guys a graphic of where I rank when I rank each fighter and like where I rank them and all that. But like, who have you lost to? When have you lost to them? Who have you beaten? How have you beaten them? So it's just a lot of factors. It's not many factors that factor into this, but a lot of sub factors inside of these, 3 little points right here. So we're going to start off the video. Here's the tier list. I'm going to set this up in a tier list format, and then I'm going to give you guys a graphic to go along with it, which I will show you in a second. But first off, we're going to reveal the number 25 fighter of all time, in my opinion, and it's Deiveson Figueiredo, man. I think that he's deserving of this. I'll show you guys. This is the graphic. I think that Deiveson Figueiredo is deserving of this spot. Now, Deiveson Figueiredo has lost 7 fights in the UFC, but most of them have been recently. And he's been losing recently because he is washed. Deiveson Figueiredo is washed. He's 39 years old. He shouldn't be fighting anymore. He's in the bantamweight division. He's looked a lot worse in the bantamweight division compared to bantamweight competition than he did in the flyweight division. He had crazy power at flyweight. But the problem with that is he was a huge flyweight. He was literally killing himself to get down to flyweight. But at flyweight, he has very good wins. He has a win over Alessandro Pantoja. It's not the Pantoja that we know nowadays. Pantoja's a lot better now. And Pantoja doesn't just walk forward at you and eat shots on the chin and try to throw winging overhands as he runs in at you. Well, I mean, he does still do that, and we'll talk about Pantoja in this video too, but yeah, win over Pantoja, not the best version of Pantoja, but still a win over Pantoja. And that's the reason why I put him here over Brandon Moreno. I know Brandon Moreno's beat him twice, but I think that Figgy has better wins, man. I think that Figgy has better wins, and he peaked, he has a better prime. And yeah, then Figgy also beat Brandon Moreno once. He drew with him. As I have that right here, he was the flyweight champion from 2020 to 2021. He had 2 defenses of that belt. 3 defenses if you include the draw, but I don't like to include draws in title defenses. And then he reclaimed the belt with a win over Brandon Moreno in their 3rd fight. He beat Joseph Benavidez twice, and horrific wins over Joseph Benavidez, by the way. Made him literally scream for mercy after waking up from being choked out cold in their 2nd fight. I believe it was the 2nd fight, yeah. Put a whooping on Joseph Benavidez both times. I believe he finished him by KO the 1st time, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. It was in the dinosaur ages compared to now. That was 6 years ago. But Then he has a win over Alex Perez, underrated win. Alex Perez was a lot better when he was facing Figgy, in my opinion. Yes, he is crafty, but nowadays he's on the brink of losing to Sumidarji, and then he gets barely kicked in the nuts, hurls, throws up, and gives up the fight. Sumidarji is kind of a cheat sometimes, though. He does eye poke, so I don't like that. And then, win over Cheeto Vera, a different version of Cheeto Vera, too. Figueiredo beat Cheeto Vera like 3 years ago, so that's a better version of Cheeto Vera. Now Cheeto Vera just walks forward until the third round and does absolutely nothing, no sense of urgency. Really annoying fighter to watch. And then a win over Cody Garbrandt, a submission win over Cody Garbrandt on the UFC 300 card. Decent win as well, but not nearly on the level of a Pantoja win or a Moreno win. But now his losses is where this drops him way down the list. And his losses are 2 losses to Moreno, not bad. But at the same time, like, if you are top 20 material, you should be beating Brandon Moreno, if I'm going to be honest. A loss to Piotr Jan, not bad at all. Also at bantamweight, he's kind of been sucking at bantamweight. He does have some wins at bantamweight, too. But it's like, come on, Montel Jackson by split decision. Come on, bro. Even though he clearly won the fight, and it shouldn't have been a split decision. Lost to Corey Sandhagen, tore out his knee in the fight, was getting dominated anyways. Lost to Umar, really did nothing in the fight besides one moment in the second round. Lost to Song Yadong, got guillotined, won the first round though, and a loss to Jussier Formiga. So that's kind of like the nobody on his resume that he lost to pre-prime, but is also not shortly before he became the flyweight champion. So interesting loss on his resume there. He's 14-7-1 in the UFC. Not a terrible record, but also not amazing. So yeah, this is where I put Figueiredo on my GOAT list. Hold on, we're going to go down another. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is where I put Figueiredo on my GOAT list. I'll make sure to move over my webcam so you guys can see everything. All right, yeah, there we go. We move on to the next guy on this list. At my number 24 spot, we have a guy who has never obtained the UFC belt, but diamonds don't need gold to shine bright. And that's Dustin Poirier. We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky. Shine bright like a diamond. Bro, he's been talking about coming back to fight Gaethje and get the belt. But I don't know if he's gonna win that. He's been on roids, retired. He's not gonna do it. He's not gonna do it, man. I think Gaethje should retire anyways. We'll talk about that in another video. But his best wins, he has really good wins, man. For not being a champion, he has good wins. The losses is where it gets kind of icky. But 22-9 UFC record. Only belt that he's ever held is a UFC interim lightweight champion belt, which he won over Max Holloway. On short notice, too, because Holloway was supposed to fight Khabib, and then Khabib had to pull out. Holloway pulled out of that fight. Hold on now. Holloway pulled out of that fight, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Holloway pulled out of that fight, and then Poirier and Holloway fought later for the interim lightweight belt. Anyways, Max Holloway 2, the second fight, Max Holloway 2, is a good win of his. He beat Max Holloway in their first fight, but that was when he was very young, so I didn't include that one here. Justin Gaethje in their first fight, a different version of Justin Gaethje, a Justin Gaethje that left himself very exposed when scrapping in the pocket, much easier to hit, and kind of like he got knocked out. He got finished by Eddie Alvarez, and we'll also talk about Gaethje in this video too. But we're going to talk about him mostly here. Gaethje got finished by Eddie Alvarez early in his career. He got finished by Poirier. They did have a dogfight. Poirier finished him in the 4th round in their first fight. Great scrap though on both ends. But this is when Gaethje was a very sloppy fighter, wasn't tidied up. Like Trevor Whitman actually did wonders on Justin Gaethje's career, and I think Trevor Whitman is the saving grace of Justin Gaethje's career, and the only reason that he was ever able to make competitive fights with like Rafael Fiziev, and let alone Ilia Topuria. So yeah, and then he had the 2 wins over McGregor, different version of McGregor. I would say that, yeah, I mean, they're still some of his best wins, but that version of McGregor could not withstand any adversity. You just have to get out of the first minute with that version of McGregor, and maybe this current version of McGregor too. We'll see in the Holloway fight how McGregor looks, but McGregor really can't withstand adversity. Once you start kicking him about 6 times, the 7th one is gonna really put a welt on him and make him walk gingerly and not want to be out there anymore, and he's gonna start quitting. And also in the 3rd fight, McGregor was winning the 3rd fight. McGregor was actually winning the first round of the 3rd fight until the leg break. So It's just McGregor had these brittle legs, old man brittle legs. He wasn't even that old back then. He was just so far removed from the game at the time and drinking and had a bad lifestyle. Anthony Pettis is also another decent win of Dustin Poirier. Eddie Alvarez put away Eddie Alvarez with a great scrap, an amazing scrap. One of the best fights of all time with Dan Hooker he had at the Apex back in the quarantine days. Now, where it gets bad with Dustin Poirier, and the reason why Dustin Poirier was never able to obtain gold, despite being a really good fighter and a solid underrated grappler and a really solid striker as well, he's lost to many opponents. Khabib Nurmagomedov, I don't hold that against Poirier. Khabib is a completely valid loss to have on your record. Khabib's never lost in the UFC. Islam Makhachev, not a bad loss to have on your record once again. Only person who was ever able to put away Islam Makhachev is Adriano Martins somehow. And ever since then, Islam Makhachev's been completely defensively sound. We'll talk more about Islam Makhachev later. Charles Oliveira, I wouldn't say prime Charles Oliveira, though. I would say this was an Oliveira that was less clean, especially on the feet, especially with his offensive grappling. And Oliveira was able to kind of dominate Gaethje. Or not Gaethje, sorry. He didn't dominate Gaethje. He had a scrap with Gaethje, but Oliveira was kind of able to dominate Poirier. Oliveira kind of made easy work of Poirier. And I know Poirier landed good shots on him as well, and I believe he dropped him. But Oliveira pretty handily put away Dustin Poirier as well. Justin Gaethje in the second fight, head kick KO. I think Poirier probably lost the first round as well. Max Holloway, the third fight. And also in the third fight with Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier was not as washed as everyone is saying he was. He was able to drop Holloway, which is a hard thing to do. Poirier was able to find his shots, but Holloway's volume was just too much for him, man. Like, Poirier actually looked quite sharp in that fight, and a lot of people underrate that performance from Max Holloway there. McGregor in the first fight. Poirier was young there. This was featherweight Poirier. Michael Johnson. Poirier was a victim of Michael Johnson, actually. And then early in his career, and I'm not going to discredit him this much for this, Cub Swanson and the Korean Zombie. Those are Dustin Poirier's other losses in his career. We're going to move on to number 23 guy on the list. Now, I originally had him like before the White House card, because I adjusted some things after the White House card. I originally had this guy in like my top 20. I had this guy above. You'll see who. I'm not gonna spoil who else is on my GOAT list, but I'm gonna put Aljamain Sterling at the number 23 spot, and this might come as a surprise to some of you because I think that Aljamain Sterling is a very good fighter, and he is a very skilled fighter. But oh my gosh. But when it stacks up to the greats and when it stacks up to who is the greatest, I don't think that Aljamain Sterling's really, really up there. I think that he's above Dustin Poirier. I think that he's above Figueiredo by a lot. I think he's above Moreno, McGregor, Cejudo. I left McGregor, Cejudo. Frankie Edgar is really underrated. I left those guys off the list for a reason, and that's because they fall short of the glory of these guys like Aljo, and they fall short of the glory of guys like who else, like the other guys that you're going to see above Aljo here. But Aljo, he's had some good wins himself, but I think that Aljo's wins are actually pretty overrated. Until recently, he stacked up some good wins in the featherweight division, besides Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's not one of his best wins, so I didn't add that on here. Petr Yan, too. I think he clearly won the fight, 48-47. It was a close fight, but it was like a close but also clear 48-47 decision win for Aljo, and Petr Yan's one of my favorite fighters. So completely unbiased, I think Aljamain Sterling won the second fight. Now, the first fight, he was losing to Petr Yan. I'm not going to count that as a loss on Aljo's record. But I'm also not going to count that as a win. Like, in reality, Aljo's 18-5, but he's 17-5 here because he didn't actually win the fight against Yan, and he was losing up until Yan illegally kneed him in the face. Also, what an acting job there from Aljo. That still pisses me off to this day. Corey Sandhagen, good win from Aljo. Aljo had a really good win against Corey Sandhagen. I believe this was a doctor stoppage. Was this a doctor stoppage? Or am I thinking about Sandhagen's win over Song Yadong? I don't remember. But I remember that I'm pretty sure Aljo got a finish over Corey Sandhagen. And Aljo's not a finisher. So he did finish TJ Dillashaw, though, at UFC 280. A different version of TJ Dillashaw, though. This is a washed version of TJ Dillashaw that he beat. Barely beat Corey Sandhagen. With a torn ACL, though, or torn meniscus or whatever it was. TJ Dillashaw is a tough dude, man. But Aljo was still able to make pretty easy work of him. TKO round 2. Washed PJ Dillashaw too, so I don't think it's that great of a win. A washed version of Henry Cejudo, not that badly washed, but he still beat a relatively washed version of Henry Cejudo. I don't think that's as good of a win as Corey Sandhagen, to be honest. That version of Cejudo at UFC 288. Still a good win from him though, because Cejudo's solid on the feet. He is small though. He's pretty small for bantamweight too. Yusuf Zalal. I actually think that Yusuf Zalal is a really good win, and I think it's going to age well because Yusuf Zalal, he's solid on the feet. He was hitting Aljo, tagging him up with the jab. I think that was the first event that we ever reacted to on this channel. But anyways, Yusuf Zalal, he's a good fighter. He's got good ground game, and Aljo made him look silly on the ground. Aljo made Yusuf Zalal look silly on the ground, and Yusuf Zalal had no answer for him. And Aljo was actually battering and beating the shit out of Yusuf Zalal against the cage with strikes, like with actual boxing and like MMA striking up against the cage. So like on the feet too at the last 30 seconds of round 4. So he almost had him out there. He almost finished him. So Brian Ortega is another win of Aljamain Sterling. A washed Brian Ortega too. That's another asterisk. A lot of Aljo's best wins are actually washed opponents. I'm just now realizing that. But Brian Ortega, he absolutely schooled Brian Ortega on the feet. It was a boring fight, yes, but he still schooled him on the feet. Renan Barão, early in Aljo's career, Renan Barão is a pretty decent win in my opinion. Now, losses. He lost to Movsar Evloev. However, it was a close fight. That's the thing with Movsar. All of Movsar's fights are close. Probably should have drew with Lerone Murphy for some reason, even though he had the clearly more damage on Lerone Murphy's face and all that. Probably should have drew with Lerone Murphy. So a lot of Movsar's fights, almost all of Movsar's fights are close. He had a close fight with Aljo though, and Aljo looked really good in the scrambles. Aljo obviously got caught by Sean O'Malley and probably lost the first round as well. O'Malley was just tagging him up on the feet a little bit, feeling out the distance in the first round, and stuffing all of Aljo's takedowns. That's another thing. I was surprised, like, looking back on all of O'Malley's performances, like the one time where he decides to stuff literally all the takedowns, and O'Malley doesn't have very good takedown defense, especially for a bantamweight, who's like taller, lankier guy. You would think he'd be able to dig the underhook. So that's exactly what he's doing with Aljo. Aljo looked like, oh my gosh, my back hurts. Aljo looked like a silly wrestler against O'Malley. He looked like an amateur against O'Malley, which really shocks me looking back at it. So that's another one. Also, Aljo lost to Marlon Moraes earlier in his career. Marlon Moraes ain't such a good loss to have on your record. And then 2 split decision losses to randoms in 2016, which I'm not going to hold against him. He was a bantamweight champion, 3 defenses. I would say 2 defenses because the way that he got the belt wasn't actually a way to get the belt with the DQ win over Petr Yan. But anyways, we're going to move on to the number 22 guy on this list. We're going to go a little bit faster now because I just realized we're already at 20 minutes and we've only got 3 guys down. Next guy I'm going to put on this list is somebody that not many people have on their GOAT list. I'm surprised about it because he has good wins, because of the mark that he left on the UFC. Dude, Francis Ngannou. I'm going to put Francis Ngannou at number 22, and I don't think enough people give Francis Ngannou the credit that he deserves because he left the UFC so early. Francis Ngannou has a win over Stipe Miocic, who I rate very highly. I rate Stipe Miocic very highly, and Francis Ngannou has a win over him. He has a win over Curtis Blades. I believe, yeah, he beat him in the first fight too, but I didn't put that as one of Ngannou's best wins because it's just like Blades wasn't as good then, but I think that his second win over Blades, a lot more clear, decisive, absolutely colded him. I believe with an uppercut. Was that it? No, that was Derek Lewis. Never mind. I forgot what he colded him with, but Francis Ngannou colded Curtis Blades as well. The only decision, and this really pissed me off, the only decision in Francis Ngannou's MMA career is to Ciryl Gane, man. And that really worries me for Aspinall, because if Ngannou wasn't able to put him out, dude, it worries me for Aspinall. Aspinall's just going to have to wrestle his ass off, because that's how Ngannou won the fight against Ciryl Gane. He just basically blobbed Ciryl Gane for the last 3 rounds of the fight. And Ciryl Gane won the first 2 rounds of the fight, as he usually does. Ciryl Gane usually starts out great. And against certain opponents, he usually continues to be great as the rounds go on. So I'm worried for Aspinall there. Win over Cain Velasquez, who was not far removed from his prime then. So, and he did catch him early. He caught him in like the first 40 seconds of the fight. That's honestly a lot of Ngannou's wins too. Like the Rosenstrike win was in 20 seconds. Kind of just wings overhands, and he has such crazy power that's unfair, completely unfair. Does the plotty heavyweights that used to go against him. Alistair Overeem, another good win. Obviously the nasty uppercut on like every best UFC knockouts highlight reel. Then his losses. Earlier in his career, he lost to Stipe Miocic the first time. Got beat handily by Miocic, but Miocic is a very good fighter. I rate him highly, and he got it back in the rematch. A different version of Stipe, a washed version of Stipe, in my opinion. And then he lost to Derek Lewis because after the fight against Stipe, when he gassed out in the later rounds, he thought, okay, I'm going to be a little bit more trigger shy and pick my shots, try to box on the outside. And he realized it wasn't working for him because he lost to Derek Lewis, man, because neither of them were doing anything either fight. They were just basically having a staring match at distance. Ref had to pull him to the center of the octagon and say, let's fight. And then Rogan was like, this is terrible on commentary. And then he'll watch Makhachev and JDM and watch Makhachev literally do nothing from full mount, crucifix, side control, all that, all fight. He'll watch it all fight and be like, dude, this is high-level MMA, man. I don't know why these guys are doing. And he'll see Charles Oliveira do nothing on the back for 25 minutes, and he'll do the same thing, man. And then he'll go, ow, whenever Charles Oliveira lands one elbow from the back. But anyways, I like Charles. Francis Ngannou, though, he's very underrated. He has one defense of the heavyweight championship, and the defense came against Cyril Gane. The win's aging better and better as time goes on. Gane's a good fighter as much as I really do hate him. And check out my most recent video on the channel. That explains why I hate him. I'm going to link it at the end of this video. But, you know, Ngannou has really good wins, and they're aging better, especially the Cyril Gane win. Curtis Blades win. Both of the wins are aging decently, but the first one was kind of... when Curtis Blades was younger. Anyways, we move on to the next guy on this tier list, on the GOAT list. I'm going to put this guy number 21, and this rating is really going to upset some of you guys, I feel like, because this, once again, I'm going to reiterate this point, this is not your grandma's GOAT list. And I like this guy, I like this fighter, I believe that he was done dirty by the UFC in his career, in some ways, but... Jose Aldo, man. I got Jose Aldo at the number 21 spot. This is going to probably get some of you guys mad. Why isn't Jose Aldo above some of the guys that you have here? I know you guys are probably going to get mad at me about that, but my answer to that is he lost to everyone who's, like, very good. Like, everyone who I can think of who's very good, besides Frankie Edgar, you know, credit to him there because Frankie Edgar is a tough opponent. Everybody else besides Frankie Edgar that's actually, like, high level that he's fought has beaten him. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it's like Conor McGregor, his losses are to Conor McGregor in his prime, not a bad loss. He got caught in the first 13 seconds. Ended his big reign over the featherweight division. 6 defenses of his featherweight title from 2011 to 2015, dinosaur ages, but he was fighting decent opponents back then. He fought Chad Mendes twice, finished him once, took him to decision the other time. You should be chinning Chad Mendes both times. Beat TKZ. I think he took TKZ to decision. I don't know. I feel like he knocked out TKZ if I remember correctly. Frankie Edgar twice. Good wins. Very good wins over Frankie Edgar. That really boosts him up heavily. Marlon Moraes. I think he beat Marlon Moraes. I think that was a robbery. But it was a really close fight. And Jose Aldo wasn't far removed from his prime there too. So, you know, he should have gotten that one done. Also, he had 3 wins at featherweight before moving down to bantamweight after losing to Volk. It was Jeremy Stevens, not a good win. I don't rate that highly at all. Hanato Moicano at featherweight. Hanato Moicano at featherweight was not good, by the way. And then some other guy. It wasn't Josh Emmett, was it? It was he, and then he beat some other guy. I forget who it was, but and then a win over Cheeto Vera, good win over Cheeto Vera. When Cheeto Vera also wasn't, you know, super trigger shy too. And then a win over Ayman Zahabi. I do think that he beat Ayman Zahabi. I think that it was. I don't think it was a robbery. Like, I know I said robbery. It's an asterisk next to it. But Ayman Zahabi had a really close fight with him, and that was at the end of Jose Aldo's career. So I might as well count it as a win. And he had a really good performance. He soccer kicked Ayman Zahabi in the face. Ayman Zahabi's super tough, though. He landed his own shots on Jose Aldo. I'm pretty sure he cut him open. But then, you know, you look at the other losses in Jose Aldo's career. Prime Jose Aldo lost twice to Holloway, got finished by him both times. Burpee today again. Lost to Piotr Jan for the bantamweight title. Got finished in round 5. Not many people get finished by Piotr Jan too. Aldo got finished by Piotr Jan. Volkanovski. I'm not gonna. A lot of these wins, I don't want to hold a lot of these wins against him. Like, I'm not gonna hold a Volk win against him. Piotr Jan's a very good fighter. Max Holloway twice. Prime McGregor. And then, I mean, Merab's a very, very good fighter as well. Like, a lot of these, but what this shows that whenever he was put against a high-level opponent, like a very high-level opponent, like somebody that's like, okay, you know, this is a GOAT, like Jose Aldo, go to the featherweight division back in the day. Let's test you against somebody who's really high level. And then they put him against Volk. They put him against Holloway twice. They put him against Prime McGregor. In the bantamweight division, they put him against Piotr Jan. They put him against Merab. They put him against Batista in his second fight back from his little short retirement. And Batista did hold him up against the cage, to be fair. I've forgiven Batista since then, but I hated that performance, obviously, as any real MMA fan would. But it's just like whenever, you know, the UFC put him against those guys, he would lose. He would lose against the really high level guys. And a lot of these fights he got finished in. Finished this fight, finished in this fight, finished in this fight, finished in this fight. Went to decision with Volk, went to decision with Merab, who isn't going to decision with Merab. Batista just held him against the fence. So the high level strikers, besides Volk, who kind of controls distance, and if he takes you down, and you're not going to take Jose Aldo down, he'll just ground and pound you to a finish. And especially back in the day, Volk, like before Volk won the championship, Volk was actually quite a finisher. But regardless, Jose Aldo has a great legacy. I did want to put him higher on the list, but I didn't because of the guys that are ahead of him. And yeah, he had 6 defenses of his featherweight title, won it back against Frankie Edgar, against a little bit more of a washed version of Frankie Edgar, though, in 2016 after he lost to McGregor. So that shows that he rebounded from his McGregor loss. But then he also got finished by Holloway twice. I'm not going to hold that against him. But anyways, we're going to move on to the top 20. Damn, 27 minutes. This is going to be a long video, man. But at the number 20 spot, I'm going to put somebody that we just recently talked about. And I'm going to put Piotr Jan at the number 20 spot. I'm not Lucas Tracy. I'm not going to put Piotr Jan in the top 10, guys. But Piotr Jan is very good. He has a good resume. All of his losses have asterisks next to them, pretty much, except for the Aljo loss in the second fight. Yeah, Piotr Jan, he's super good. He's super skilled. But another thing that's worth noting is that this isn't a most skilled fighter. This isn't the best fighters you've ever seen list. This is the greatest fighters of all time. Who do I think stacks up the most in terms of legacy compared to the other guy on this list, compared to the other guy on this list, compared to the other guy? And then you got the top 3 guys, which we'll reveal later. But you know, and I feel like the top 3 guys aren't very controversial too. I feel like the top 3 guys on my list are commonly agreed upon. Oh my gosh, man, my neck hurts. Yo, I didn't say that. Anyways, yeah, so Piotr Jan's, he's got good wins. Jose Aldo's a pretty good win. Broke him down the whole fight, finished him in round 5. Piotr Jan, the thing about Piotr Jan, though, is he's not getting many finishes, man. Excuse me. He wasn't able to finish Merab despite literally beating him to a bloody pulp, breaking his nose as it looked, even though Merab has a very breakable nose and it tends to scar up and cut pretty fast. He wasn't able to finish Merab, and he was hurting him bad to the body and kind of just walking him down. Not much finishing instincts from Piotr Jan. He just kind of walks you down and keeps trying to hurt you. And if he breaks you, and that's what he did to Jose Aldo. Great performance over Corey Sandhagen. I think he dropped every single one of his opponents in fights, except for Merab, because Merab's super tough, to be fair, even though he screams whenever he gets hit in the body. Win over Song Yadong, aging better and better over time. Song Yadong's super twitchy. You know, he's super hard to beat. It's really hard to beat off Yadong. To beat Yadong. It's hard to beat Yadong, but anyways, win over Figueiredo, decent win. Figueiredo not in his prime. Figueiredo has not been very good at bantamweight, to say the least. But still a pretty good win. And then you got Uriah Faber. He looks like a 50-year-old retired skateboarder, yeah? And then the losses. Merab in the first fight, while he was injured, Piotr Jan had a broken hand in that fight. People forget, man, Piotr Jan actually was not throwing that right hand, and that contributed to why he was getting just kind of taken down at will. Like Merab shot 49 takedowns in that fight. Merab was just doing whatever he wanted to Petr Yan in that fight, easily 50-45'd him. And I think that was part to Petr Yan having a broken hand, and that showed him their second fight. And I think it's going to show him their third fight again, especially because Merab's nose is really messed up. He got cut on the nose and was bleeding out of the nose in a wrestling match. So, that's not a good look for him, man. And then a loss to Sean O'Malley. I don't know if it was a loss to Sean O'Malley because that fight was really up in the air. You could have Petr Yan 2-1. You could have O'Malley 2-1, I guess. I feel like the argument for Yan winning that fight is stronger. I don't agree with people saying it's a robbery, though. I don't think that fight was a robbery. It could have went either way. And then Aljo, too. That's really the only clear loss on his resume. Petr Yan's super good, though. Really good striking. Great takedown defense. Good grappling himself. He took down Merab 5 times. I mean, that's got to say something. Dunked Merab on his head. Won the Bantamweight Championship off Jose Aldo, and now won it again. And he's got no defenses, but he's only got, so far he's got 0 defenses. But I wonder when the Merab fight's going to be booked. I'm looking forward to seeing him fight Merab again for his legacy and to see how that plays out. There you go. We move on further, deeper inside of the top 20 to the number 19 spot. I feel like this spot's going to get some people mad too, because I rated this guy pretty highly before a lot of his losses, man. And he's lost a lot. He's lost 4 in a row. And actually, I think it's 5 in a row. No, it's 4 in a row. This guy's lost 4 in a row. And you guys may know who I'm talking about. Israel Adesanya. Yeah, man, the only reason I have him at number 19, and the only reason I have him below a lot of guys, the only reason I have him below some middleweights, and we'll look at that, some middleweights, plural. I actually have 2 middleweights above him. We'll see. And I used to think Izzy was the middleweight GOAT. I used to rate him higher than Anderson Silva on the middleweight GOAT list. Not anymore, man. After I see him lose to Joe Pyfer and not even look bad in that fight, he didn't even look too badly out of prime. He didn't look badly out of prime in the Imavov fight because he's winning the first round. And against good opponents, Joe Pyfer's a good opponent. Nasruddin Imavov's a good opponent. These guys are just catching him, man. These guys are just... It's something weird about Izzy. And I think some of it's Izzy's grappling, too. Some of it's, he makes bad decisions nowadays. His fight IQ's taking a dip. And I don't even think it's just that, man. I think it's because of the competition that he was fighting in the middleweight division back in the day compared to now, what the competition in the middleweight division looks like now because of the champions that's been in the middleweight division, because of the way that the middleweight division is evolving. He's losing a lot of these stylistic matchups now. And I think that'll lose his next fight depending on who it is. So, he's lost to Jan Blachowicz. I'm not going to really hold it against him. Jan Blachowicz is a lot bigger than him. He went up in weight. That was his first ever loss in the UFC. He was 20-0 at one point. It became 20-1 because of Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz just outclassed him, man. Jan Blachowicz had a crafty performance per usual. Calf kicks, jab, mixing in the wrestling. Izzy has good takedown defense, too. That's another good thing about Izzy's game. But we're not talking about his skill right now. We're talking about his legacy. In the first fight to Alex Pereira, he was winning until he got caught. He got caught by Alex Pereira, got stumbled. Alex Pereira's calf kicks were taking damage on his leg. Alex Pereira dropped him with that calf kick, made him somersault backwards, and then started teeing off on him against the fence, caught him with left hooks, standing TKO. I wish Mark Goddard let that one go on a little longer so we could see Adesanya finished, actually finished, because he hasn't been flatlined. I mean, he's been dropped badly by Mavov and dropped badly by Strickland too, but Strickland didn't finish the fight. So, I mean, if they let that one with Pereira go on, then we could have seen Izzy finished, man. And I don't like Izzy for some reasons, for some things that Izzy's done. But now he's more chill. Now he's more laxed. But I can't get over some of the things I've seen on Twitter, man. Anyways, he lost to Strickland. Big upset. Sean Strickland pulled it off against him. Lost to Duplessis, was winning, and he wasn't even winning that fight. It was 2-2. It was 2-2 until he got stumbled by Duplessis, and Duplessis fell into a takedown, dropped a falling piano on his head, and submitted him. He submitted him on the ground, and Adesanya had never been submitted before that. Amavov then caught him the next fight, and then Joe Pyfer, and then I think he's just going to keep racking up losses. I think that he'll fight Bo Nickel next, and I think he's going to lose that fight. I think he'll lose to Bo Nickel because Bo Nickel's ranked now. They gave him a ranking at number 15 spot. I mean, the privilege for this guy is insane. He beats Adolfo Vieira and Kyle Dawkins and Paul Craig, and now he's ranked. It's interesting, man. But now we'll talk about Izzy's wins. He beat Alex Pereira. He was getting beat up in the fight. Alex Pereira was teeing off on him because, Alex Pereira pretty much, he kind of dominated the first round, and he was looking like he was going to do the same in the second. But then Izzy just catches him, playing possum, and he hits him with a nasty knockout that flatlines him. I'd say the best win of Izzy's career. Wins the first fight over Robert Whittaker, prime Bobby Knuckles, a good version of Bobby Knuckles, caught him and knocked him out. Then a win over Robert Whittaker in the second fight, which was close. It was a very close fight. I don't think it went. I don't think it could have went either way. If they gave it to Whittaker, I wouldn't be mad, but it didn't go to Whittaker. It was a close fight. I don't think it was a robbery. Like Lucas Tracy says, the fight was a robbery and it should have went to Whittaker. I completely disagree. Paulo Costa, now you could make the argument that Izzy was doping for that fight. He had a tit hanging off of him in that fight, and it still looks like he kind of does, but I think that's just the Gyno in him. But Paulo Costa, he got beat by Israel Adesanya, worse version of Paulo Costa, not a prime Paulo Costa like we're seeing now. Beat Jared Cannonier. I feel like Jared Cannonier was honestly more deserving of a rematch with Izzy than Marvin Vettori was. But then, he beat Kelvin Gastelum. And I know that's like, oh, he beat Kelvin Gastelum. What a silly win to put on there as his best wins. It was prime KG, though. Dude, prime Kevin Gastelum was low-key a marauder. He was a tough guy. He would eat shots. Yeah, he was actually tough out for Izzy and gave him a really tough fight. So I feel like a guy that's... Dude, a guy like Duplessis would actually be beating the shit out of Kelvin Gastelum and finishing him. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know about it's a good win. It's a good win to have because prime Kelvin Gastelum, locked in Kelvin Gastelum that wasn't constantly eating all the tacos and missing weight every fight. But yeah, I mean, Izzy had 5 title defenses at middleweight, won it back after losing it to Alex Pereira, and he was winning the first fight. And then he was losing the second fight, and both fights happened in different outcomes, but kind of the same way. But yeah, there you go. That's my rating for Izzy. We move on to the next guy on this list. I'm gonna put him at the number 18 spot. And man, this video is going slow. I gotta speed up on this. I'm gonna put this guy at the number 18 spot. I'd say, the second best flyweight of all time, Alessandro Pantoja, one of my favorite fighters, my boy. I met him in person. Absolutely sick fighter, super entertaining fighter, super skilled fighter. I'd say probably one of the best chins of all time. Pound for pound, one of the best chins of all time. I see this guy get hit with, the uppercut of doom from Davison Figueiredo early on in his career too, so I'm not really going to hold that loss much against him. Dustin Ortiz, on the other hand, I might with that one. But, the loss to Dustin Ortiz early in his career as well, early in his career in the UFC. The loss to Askar Askarov, not so early in his career. But at one point, Askar Askarov was low-key a marauder, you know what I'm saying? I'm kidding. But Askar Askarov, a bit of an iffy loss. Davison Figueiredo, I'm not going to hold that against him. Davison Figueiredo was literally piecing him up on the feet, but Prime Figgy was something different, man. Prime Figgy was actually different, and I have no clue how Moreno pulled that off. But then MMA math's weird like that, because then Alessandro Pantoja beats Moreno twice. And the first win over Moreno was you know what I'm saying? Moreno he was younger, and I think Moreno got submitted in that fight, didn't he? I'm pretty sure, no, that was Roy Val. No, he got, Pantoja submitted Roy Val in the first fight. But yeah, I mean, the second fight with Moreno, absolute dogfight. I think it was a clear 48-47 win for Alessandro Pantoja in the second fight with Moreno, which was the one that really mattered. It's the one that won him the belt. Both fights with Brandon Royval, he finished Brandon Royval in their first fight as a contender, and then as the championship, he decisioned Brandon Royval out cold, unanimously, and win over Mel Kanop. Manel Kopp. I can't speak right now, guys. Sorry, it's almost my bedtime. Again, I'm making these videos too late. A win over Manel Kopp, man. A win over Manel Kopp as a contender. Very good win. I think he handed Manel Kopp one of his first losses in the UFC. I think one of his only losses in the UFC is to Alessandro Pantoja. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Manel Kopp's only losses in the UFC are Pantoja and Muhammad Makayev. So, I mean, that's something to be said there. And Manel Kape in the UFC is a lot different than Manel Kape on like Ryzen or wherever he was fighting Horiguchi back in the day. And he's fighting Horiguchi this week. We're going to have the predictions video out today or tomorrow. So, yeah, then Pantoja fought Alex Perez, different version of Alex Perez. He submitted Alex Perez and then submitted Kai Kara-France. Underrated win. Kai Kara-France, you know, he's a dangerous opponent. And Pantoja went out there, submitted him, dominated him like it was nothing. I got a notification on my screen. Got to get it out of there. 4 defenses as the flyweight champion, 14-3 UFC record. I took the Van loss off his record because it's not a real loss. Fluke injury in 30 seconds. He should know how to post off his arm as a big Pantoja fan, but we're gonna get this one back. We're gonna beat Van, and then we're gonna move up the GOAT list. You know what I'm saying? Van would be a very good win for us. But yeah, there you go. We move on to the number 17 spot. And this one I have recently added to the list, up from the depths of the number 30 spot all the way into the top 20 recently after the UFC White House card. Justin Rufus Gaethje, man. We're going to put him at the number 17 spot, and this is why, man. I think he's way better and way higher up on the GOAT list than Dustin Poirier, and I think that he got the better of the two fights against Dustin Poirier, because in the first fight against Dustin Poirier, he was a younger guy, you know, scrapping in the pocket, chin out there and open, not technical at all, and sometimes he is not technical at all still, but he's just like, he's standing here and he's more measured with his approach, and it works. He's like here and he's going and just like throwing his sloppy jab out there, and then he throws this right hand over the top. It's a two, but it's like an overhand two. It's like, and that's what he caught Ilya with and almost knocked him out with if he didn't go into like a gable grip Darce choke position, which he was never gonna get. And then, yeah, he has that dirty boxing uppercut that he dropped Chandler with, dropped Fiziev with, hurt Ilya in the first round with it, took away vision from his eye. And yeah, I mean, I think that the major highlight, man, the major highlight of the highlights career is that recent win on the White House against Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria looking like an undefeated specimen before the fight. Absolutely knocking out everyone, submitting a lot of people, going to decision with Josh Emmett somehow, but still beating the brakes off of him. And Justin Gaethje made him look more than human. He made him look, or not more. He made him look human. That's what I meant to say. Justin Gaethje made Ilia Topuria look human for the first time in his career. Besides when Max Holloway was stinging him up a little bit, and besides when Ilia Topuria was sick against Yusuf Zalal in his debut. But Justin Gaethje was hitting him from angles on the outside in the first round, hit a nasty clinch, like grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and hit the uppercut on him. McGregor predicted that one. I'll grab him by the scruff of his chest and smack the little nose off him, yeah? The little ding-dong of a ding he is, yeah? But Justin Gaethje, he grabbed Ilia Topuria by the scruff of his neck and hit a nasty uppercut on him with his dirty boxing. It works. It's sloppy. It's like kind of like a Duplessis striking of the lightweight division. But it works for him, and it works a lot better now. And he exploited the stylistic matchup against Ilia Topuria, exploited Ilia Topuria's confidence and arrogance, and he ended up beating him. I think Ilia Topuria, I rate him very highly, and he's a super good fighter, one of the most skilled fighters of all time, one of the best fighters, one of the best, like, if we're making a skill list, Ilia Topuria is probably one of the most skilled fighters of all time, and Justin Gaethje made him look human. And then the win over Dustin Poirier in the second fight, I'd say a better win than Dustin Poirier's win over him in the first fight. We see in the second fight a not far from prime Poirier, UFC 291 in 2023. Justin Gaethje probably wins the first round against Dustin Poirier. We already went over this one when we were talking about Dustin Poirier. And Justin Gaethje puts him out with a head kick KO, nasty head kick KO, wraps around the guard, absolutely stiffens Dustin Poirier. Yeah, I mean, great win from him there. And then he also snapped the nasty 13-fight win streak. I think it was 13 fights. 13-fight win streak of Tony Ferguson. And he made Tony Ferguson look human, too, when Tony Ferguson could barely be touched in the lightweight division. And I know Tony Ferguson was fighting like Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis and Kevin Lee. So not very good opponents. You know, Anthony Pettis is decent, but other than that, you know, and he got busted up by Anthony Pettis in that fight, too. But when he fought Justin Gaethje, his face and his life was changed. And that's what I worry about with Ilia Topuria, because his performance against Ilia Topuria looks similar to his performance against Tony Ferguson. And when Tony Ferguson took that damage and he tried to get back in there quickly, it was life-changing for him. He couldn't get his mental back on track. Justin Gaethje beats the souls out of people. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not always flatlining everyone and finishing them, but he hits hard to the point where it's like, oh, he's going to hit hard to knock you out. No, he just hits hard in this weird way that leaves damage on your face, and I think it's because of his bone density. The reason he doesn't get bruised up on the face, he's got this weird bone density about him where his hands are just so heavy and his shins are heavy, and he's Rufus for a reason, man. He's a weird specimen. He's ginger, you know, he's just interesting, man. It looks like he was built in a lab. And probably one of the worst cases of cauliflower ear I've ever seen, too, right here. Win over Edson Barboza, underrated win. This was before his prime, too. This was like a prepubescent Gaethje that was beating Edson Barboza. That was losing to Eddie Alvarez, too. He's lost to Eddie Alvarez. You lose to Eddie Alvarez, and I put you number 17. That means you've made some improvements if you're getting KO'd by Eddie Alvarez and you're at my number 17 spot. So Eddie Alvarez probably his worst loss to have on his record. Dustin Poirier in the first fight, we already went over that one. Habib caught him in the mounted triangle. Ilya was trying to go for it, but I don't know. He was trying to go to subs when Justin Gaethje was badly hurt to the body and almost finished. I don't know why he didn't just stand him up or just land ground and pound. You know what I'm saying? But you know, that's another thing. That's a talk for another day. And then he lost to Charles Oliveira, scrap in the first round, dropped Oliveira twice. And then ended up getting submitted. He got the mustard put on him with a nasty straight right hand down the middle from Oliveira, and then Oliveira went through his progression of submissions, ended up settling with the rear naked choke and finished Justin Gaethje in that fight. And then Max Holloway, absolutely. I think Max Holloway is probably the number one. Like, Max Holloway is the guy out of Justin Gaethje's losses that absolutely schooled him, and that's interesting because, like, you see some guys that try to be technical aren't always working that well against Justin Gaethje, like Ilya Topuria right out the gate, trying to be technical, but also like walking into jabs. Like, I watched the fight back, and what the hell was Ilya doing? He was just walking into jabs with his with his hands up, and he was just like walking into jabs. Like, he's never boxed a day in his life, man. Like, he couldn't parry anything. He couldn't parry anything. He couldn't slip anything. I don't know. It's a talk for later in the video. It's a talk for another day. Justin Gaethje beat Paddy Pimblett. We'll see if that one ages well. 2 wins over Rafael Fiziev. Not too bad. Michael Chandler win. And this was a different version of Michael Chandler when Michael Chandler was more dangerous, less hesitant like he was against. I think Michael Chandler was like scared shitless against Mauricio Huffy. But Justin Gaethje with an 11-5 UFC record, 2-time interim champion against Tony Ferguson, against Paddy Pimblett, and then wins the lightweight championship against Ilya Topuria. Super impressive win. And yeah, we'll see if he retires or not. I think he should probably retire. He's got all the legacy now. He should probably ride off in the sunset. All right, there you go. We move on to the next guy that I'm going to put on this tier list. And you know what? I said that there would be 2 middleweights left to go on the video, and you know one of them, Silva. But the other guy that I'm going to put over Adesanya, Sean Strickland, man. Speaking of upsets, speaking of the American upsets, both these guys have won and beat guys that have looked like unbeatable prospects within a month of each other, which is absolutely crazy to think about. Absolutely crazy to think about. And Strickland's official UFC record is 18-7, I believe. But I've changed it to 20-5 because there are 2 fights that I think he won. I think he definitely won the Jared Cannonier fight. There's no way the Jared Cannonier fight didn't go to him. And then the Duplessis 1 fight. I think that Strickland clearly won the first. I think that he won the second, and I think that he won the 5th. You know, like, the second is up for grabs, and there's a reason I say it's close. You could have given it to Duplessis because Duplessis did cut him in the second round, but most of that round was controlled by Strickland until Duplessis took him down and cut him against the cage. And yeah, but anyways, we're going to talk about Sean Strickland's major wins in his career and why I think that he's above Adesanya. Because, number one, he beat Adesanya, and he beat a prime Adesanya. This is really the loss that we saw of the confidence and, you know, the swagger of prime Izzy. And Izzy was going into this fight emotional because of the build-up, and Strickland was talking shit and all that and saying a lot of things that were true about him. But, you know, Strickland beat a prime Izzy. He beat Dricus du Plessis in the first fight. I think that he beat Dricus in the first fight, who is a nightmare stylistic matchup for him. To be honest, Dricus is like the number 1 nightmare stylistic matchup for Sean Strickland for whatever reason. And I think Strickland got it done in the first fight. which is impressive. And then also recently the major win over Khamzat Chimaev, who looked like an unbeatable opponent, took him down in the first round, held him there in a body triangle, doing absolutely nothing but looking for submissions. Had him in a rear naked choke position, but Strickland did a really good job defending it. And then later on in the fight, also in the second round, he made Khamzat pull guard. He ended up on top, landed some good ground and pound. Before that, the reason that Khamzat pulled guard is because Strickland wobbled him with a right hand that he didn't even put much power into somehow. And Khamzat shoots a panic takedown, and then it gets stuffed by Strickland, and then Khamzat pulls guard. And, dude, it's just America, baby, man. You know what I'm saying? And then he wins this third round, and then he clearly wins the fifth round, and he wins a 48-47 decision. Classic Sean Strickland style, jabbing and teeping his way to a decision. He didn't even need to pull out the teeps for that one. He was just peppering Khamzat with the jab. And Khamzat did a good job in that fight. I think Khamzat did better in that fight than Adesanya did, especially on the feet. Khamzat's really underrated on the feet. And then the Anthony Hernandez win stopped Fluffy's winning streak at 8. Fluffy's a really good contender. I think that win's going to keep aging better and better and better as time goes on. Win over Paulo Costa, an improved version of Paulo Costa as well. That was Paulo Costa right before he revolutionized, before Paulo Costa started looking really good against Roman Kopylov and against Azamat Murzakanov. Strickland beat Paulo Costa, and I think Paulo Costa looked not terrible in that fight. He was trying to blast his body kicks, but Strickland's just so defensively sound on the feet that it don't even matter for him. Nasruddin Mavov win on 2 weeks' notice. That is looking better and better and better as time goes on. A finish win over Brendan Allen, another win that's aging really well. And now when we go over Strickland's losses, 3 losses when he was really young. Santiago Ponzinibbio, not a great loss, but he was very young in that fight. Kamaru Usman lost to him, got dropped by Kamaru Usman. But number 1, it's Kamaru Usman. Number 2, Strickland was very young in that fight, and he was at welterweight for all of these losses that I'm noting right here. Excuse me. And then Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. He lost to Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos when he was younger, and he got KO'd in this fight. This was, I think, one of 2 fights in the UFC where he's been KO'd. And the other one is by Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira finished him with a nasty left hook. And then right after the nasty left hook that dropped him, another big shot. I think it was a straight right down the middle from Alex Pereira, and it put Strickland out again. Alex Pereira was putting Strickland out of it. Like the second he landed clean on Strickland, and Pereira's was obviously huge for middleweight. How did he even make 185? But Alex Pereira beat him, and then DDP beat him in the second fight. And DDP's a nightmare matchup for Strickland as well. And Strickland was the middleweight champion. I think that he defended his belt against DDP after beating Adesanya in Australia on how many weeks' notice was it? It was 3 weeks' notice, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was 3 weeks' notice that he had to fight Adesanya on in Australia. And he beat him. He beat him on his home turf. And this was a prime Adesanya that was fully prepared for this fight. And I think that Strickland's definitely one of the top 20 fighters of all time, right outside the top 15. I think that if he gets another win, maybe another win over a Mavov, if he gets a win over DDP, if they run a third one for some reason, I don't really want to see a third fight between Strickland and DDP. But, if they run a third one, he beats DDP, maybe he beats a Mavov or something like that. I think that he goes into the top 15 immediately. And I think that he goes ahead a lot of guys that I'm going to note on this list, and especially because he's finally defended his belt. One thing that's holding him below the other middleweight, spoiler alert, Silva, that I'm going to put on this list is because he's never defended his belt, except for technically one defense against DDP. But that takes us to the next guy on our list. We move on to the top 15, and I just spoiled it. Anderson Silva is the guy that I'm going to put one spot ahead of Sean Strickland. A lot of unks are going to be mad at this, probably, I'm guessing, and I don't understand why. Because the thing about Silva, man, is he's lost a lot of times, man. He's lost 6 times, technically, in the UFC, and all of them have been, they basically been in a row, besides the Derek Brunson win that he had in the middle of all of his losses. But it's he had some good wins. Way back in the day, in his title reign, 2006 to 2013, he had 10 defenses. Crazy stat, by the way. You know, the guy reigned as a middleweight champion for 7 years. You got to give him credit, and he was a good striker for the time too, ahead of his time for sure. He would have competed with maybe not modern day middleweights, but I think that he definitely would have competed with like Prime Silva versus Prime Adesanya. I think Silva would have competed with him for sure. I think he maybe even could have won that one because Adesanya's um I don't think he's ever really faced an opponent like Prime Anderson Silva. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, Anderson Silva, he's fought Damian Maia, beat Damian Maia, Rich Franklin twice, underrated, I guess. Dan Henderson, Forrest Griffin, not a very good win. Chael Sonnen twice, almost. He was getting beaten in the first fight against Chael Sonnen, and then he pulled off a miraculous triangle submission. And Vitor Belfort's a decent win. Joe Rogan likes to glaze that a lot on this podcast for some reason, and give guys like Volk, Volk's a real, actually no, never mind. He doesn't bring up the Belfort win of Silva. He brings up the Belfort win of Jones a lot, and he never glazes Volk for some of Volk's wins, man. Oh my gosh! All right, there we go. I had to clear my throat, but yeah, I mean Silva's lost to Chris Weidman. He lost to Chris Weidman cleanly once. And yeah, I know like one of them doesn't count because he broke his leg, but one of them does count, and that's the one that he got caught. He was trying to taunt, and then he just gets caught with an offbeat left hook and then a straight that hits him on the chin. I don't know what exactly the sequence is. It might have been a 2-3. It was a long combination. It might have been like a 1-2-3-2 or something like that. And like the last shot hits him on the chin, and it was a little tiny shot on the chin from Chris Weidman, but it was offbeat, so it puts him out. And yeah, I mean that's the first loss of Anderson Silva's UFC career, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was. And then he lost to Michael Bisping. Probably should have beat him. I think that at the time he should have beat Michael Bisping for sure. Lost to Daniel Cormier when he was 41 years old though. This is where it's like, okay, Silva's obviously not in his prime anymore. He lost to DC when he was 41, fighting Adesanya when he was 43. He was an absolute unk at like 45 and 46 when he's fighting Cannonier and Uriah Hall. Lost to Cannonier by a leg kick TKO. His legs were super weak after getting his leg broken against Chris Weidman. And, you know, I would put him, I'd say number 15 is a safe spot because the guys that I'm going to put above him have much better wins than Damian Maia, Vitor Belfort. And I know these were the only guys that were there, but it's just like the sport evolves, and when you see a guy get wins against better opponents, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to want to put them ahead of the guy who was beating cans back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So, and having struggles with Chael Sonnen, who has shown that he doesn't compete with the level of fighters nowadays. So, you know what I'm saying? You see where I'm going here. You see where my logic's kind of ticking here. But anyways, we're going to move on to the number 14 spot on this tier list. And you know what? I had this guy in the top 10 not long ago. I actually had Max. Wait, shit. What happened here? Anderson Silva. There we go. Max Holloway. I actually put Max Holloway. I had Max Holloway in the top 10 not a long time ago. But now I don't know, man. I definitely don't think he's top 10 anymore. He's taken some losses. And I have Max Holloway at number 14, but he has good wins, man. Max Holloway has really good wins. I think that he's a much better featherweight all time than Jose Aldo, don't get me wrong. He beat Jose Aldo in his prime twice. He beat Brian Ortega, a really good version of Brian Ortega, absolutely messed up his face. Was teaching him how to block punches as the fight went on. I'm pretty sure he won that fight by doctor stoppage, if I'm not wrong. Make sure to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Beat Justin Gaethje, absolutely masterclassed him in his first fight at lightweight, or actually second fight at lightweight. But we're not gonna count Dustin Poirier too as Max Holloway enthusiasts here. And then the Dustin Poirier 3-win. Dustin Poirier was a bit of an unk here, but I mentioned this earlier in the video, he was not as washed as people thought he was. Like, he was still looking like himself. He's looking like he was against BFD, looking like he was against Gaethje in the first round a little bit. An Arnold Allen win for Max Holloway here, super underrated win from him. Arnold Allen is an absolutely, he's a spectacular featherweight, very good fighter. Frankie Edgar, kind of the ghost. He was kind of beating up the ghost of Frankie Edgar here, but Frank Yeager is a decent win regardless, and especially at the time, it wasn't actually, thinking back at it, it wasn't that much of a ghost of Frank Yeager, but still, it was a wash Frank Yeager pretty decently. Yair Rodriguez, good win. Yair Rodriguez is an underrated win for Max Holloway here. I think his Yair Rodriguez win was a better Yair Rodriguez than Volk fought, and better Yair Rodriguez that Volk finished. Volk was able to really find that kill shot on Yair Rodriguez though when Max wasn't able to. And I think that might have been due to Yair Rodriguez accumulating damage from this fight and from other fights in his career. And then the Anthony Pettis win, when Anthony Pettis was actually low-key a marauder when he was fighting Tony Ferguson and all that. So there you go. His losses, though, he has a lot of losses in the UFC. But the thing is that there are asterisks next to his losses. The Dustin Poirier first loss, Dustin Poirier was a lot better than him in this fight, and he was very young. This was Max Holloway's debut. This was Max Holloway's debut fight, and Dustin Poirier submitted him. Conor McGregor when he was young, and Conor McGregor didn't finish him. Conor McGregor beat Max Holloway via wrestling in that fight. So that's interesting. And then Dennis Bermudez, a nobody, but Max Holloway was young in the game. Didn't get finished in any of those fights. And then the Dustin Poirier 2 fight got busted up, got beat up in the Dustin Poirier 2 fight. Just didn't have the power for lightweight at the time, man. He didn't have the frame, didn't have the power for lightweight, looked really skinny compared to Dustin Poirier in that fight, and looked outmatched on the feet and just like completely out. He looked like Dustin Poirier had a lot more pop and a lot more, heat in his hands than Max Holloway did at lightweight. Like Max Holloway had absolutely no power at lightweight at the time. And the infamous 3 losses to Volk. The second fight was very close between Volk and Max. Holloway won the first two rounds of that fight, and then Volk took over in the last 3 rounds, and I think he very clearly won the last 3 rounds of the fight. So legendary comeback from Volk in the second fight. First fight, I think Volk handily won, and then the third fight was a clear domination from Volkanovski, and that was the best that Max Holloway had ever been in that trilogy. So Volk had just been getting better and better and better over time, and we'll talk about Volk later in the video as well. He's the featherweight GOAT in my opinion. And then you have Ilia Topuria, the first guy to ever finish Max Holloway in a fight, and the first guy to ever knock out Max Holloway in a fight. Just broke him down at range. Max Holloway, the only reason that he was beating Ilia Topuria, not beating, but the only reason he was hitting Ilia Topuria is because he was fighting very good and very smart. He was being very technical, hitting him with leg kicks. But Ilia Topuria was able to mix it up a lot, and then he eventually found the shot that wobbled Max Holloway. First time that I've ever seen Max Holloway wobble like that in his career. And then Ilia Topuria finds the left hook and puts him away. Nasty KO finish there from Ilia Topuria. And then the Charles Oliveira fight. Charles Oliveira just absolutely out-grappled him. But Charles Oliveira is a super good offensive wrestler and jiu-jitsu artist. And Max Holloway didn't even get submitted in that fight. He was the featherweight champion from 2017 to 2019. He had 3 defenses, 4 title wins at featherweight. And then he's a BMF champion. I added that little accolade too. So there you go. And he was the interim champion, beat Anthony Pettis for the interim championship. And there you go. We're going to move on to the next guy on this tier list. And he recently beat Max Holloway in his most recent fight. And that's Charles Oliveira. Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Charles do Bronx Oliveira. There you go. Charles Oliveira. I think that he's very underrated. He has a lot of losses in the UFC, though. That's the one thing that I think holds him down majorly. My throat is getting extremely sore. I need to speed up this video, but there's a lot of content that we need to get to in this video, and this has been a long-awaited video for me to make. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that not Max. What's his name? Charles Oliveira. I was blanking for a second. Charles Oliveira, I think that his best win in his career is actually Max Holloway. And that just came as his most recent win. Max Holloway, he absolutely, I think that he beat him on the feet. Whenever they were on the feet, he was landing head kicks because of the threat of grappling that was presented to Max Holloway. Right away to start the fight, Oliveira just blitzes in and then gets double underhooks, gets the body lock, and takes Max Holloway down. Max Holloway looks shell-shocked. He looked like that on the ground. And yeah, I mean, Charles Oliveira had him in bad positions for the rest of the round. Max Holloway smiling, thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna survive in the end round. I didn't get submitted by Oliveira there. And then Oliveira does the same thing every single round, puts him in the body triangle, gets his back every time. Doesn't do much damage and doesn't submit him, but he still dominated Max Holloway, beat him on the feet too. The Dustin Poirier win. I think that right now, this is my hot take. I think that right now, Charles Oliveira is in his prime. If he beats Arman, I think that's a major win on his resume, and I think he's in the top 10. I think maybe not the top 10, but I think he definitely jumps above some guys that are right outside the top 10, like the number 12 guy, the number 11 guy. And I think that he probably jumps the number 10 guy too. So I think that he barely gets himself into the top 10 if he wins his next fight against Arman Tsarukyan. But I mean, it's not confirmed that he's going to fight Arman Tsarukyan, and I have a matchup that makes more sense for him than Arman Tsarukyan. It's not a matchup that's like he's going to have to, what I'm going to say is he's going to have to take another lower ranked contender fight because of Gaethje destroying the plans of the lightweight division against Ilia Topuria. So, then the Dustin Poirier win, dominated Dustin Poirier most of the fight. Really impressive win against Mateusz Gamrot, who's got great wrestling, got great grappling. Oliveira imposed his own wrestling on Mateusz Gamrot and was able to control him there, was able to work his jiu-jitsu. Nasty face crank submission. Looked like a face crank because I don't think it was under the neck of Gamrot, but nasty submission at the end in round 2 from Charles Oliveira on Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz Gamrot's a super tough guy to finish, man. That's the other thing. And Oliveira was kind of just walking him down on the feet, putting the pressure on him, not moving his head at all, and was just able to impose his grappling, man. That's Charles Oliveira. He's a pressure fighter. He's in your face no matter what. And you're gonna drop him, he's gonna get back up unless you're Ilia Topuria and you have the power of doom in your hands, which got nullified by Gaethje out of all people. But he nearly had Gaethje finish in round 2, man. You know what I'm saying? And then that takes us to another win of Charles Oliveira's career. He beat Justin Gaethje. And Justin Gaethje, that was pretty good as well. Not as good. I think that the Justin Gaethje that Oliveira beat is better than the Justin Gaethje that beat Ilia Topuria. That's my opinion. And Justin Gaethje is just not a good stylistic matchup for Ilia Topuria. But at the same time, I think Ilia Topuria was super off in the fight at the way. I'll talk about Topuria in a second. But the Michael Chandler wins. The first win against Michael Chandler, he was getting beaten in the first round, got dropped badly, almost got finished in the first round. Comes back immediately at the start of the second round. He drops him, beats Michael Chandler, absolutely dominated absolutely dominated Michael Chandler in the grappling in the second fight. He beat Beneil Dariush when Beneil Dariush was in his prime, put him out in the second round. Who doesn't put out Beneil Dariush? And then he beat Tony Ferguson, man. Almost submitted him with an armbar, but Tony Ferguson at that point was too tough to be finished. And yeah, his losses was brings him down. A lot of losses when he was younger. I'm pretty sure this guy lost to Paul Felder. He was losing to almost everyone when he was younger in the game. Looked like just a journeyman in the UFC, and then his kids was born, and he started winning all these fights. He started going on win streaks. He beat Kevin Lee in a big fight and all this stuff. And he went on a kill streak, and I think he was on like a 13-fight win streak before losing to Islam Makhachev. And that just goes to show how good Islam Makhachev is, because Islam Makhachev was able to drop him on the feet, catch him midair, and almost KO'd him, gets him in an arm triangle, and submits him with an arm triangle. Nasty squeeze there from Islam Makhachev. That's like the wrestler squeeze submissions is what Islam Makhachev's really good at. Oh my gosh, my voice is failing me. And then the loss to Arman Tsarukyan, another close fight. I think that Arman pretty clearly took it 2-1. I think that Arman pretty clearly won that fight, but I would like to see that one run back. And then the loss to Ilia Topuria just kind of wanders into right hooks. But yeah, Ilia Topuria is really, I'd say, the only real fight of his career besides the younger stage losses where he's got like absolutely dominated and made easy work of. So like Islam Makhachev wasn't making easy work of him. Yes, he was doing good against him, but it wasn't as easy as Ilia Topuria did it. And I think Ilia Topuria is honestly lucky that he got Charles Oliveira out of there when he could, because let's say he empties out the gas tank and tries to finish Oliveira in round 1 because that's what he's banking on. Then same thing happens as it did in the Gaethje fight. Except Oliveira, like the grapplers I feel like are easy matchups for Ilia Topuria. Anyways, we'll talk about Ilia Topuria in a second. Accomplishments here from Oliveira: 25-10 UFC record, kind of yucky, but 25 wins is impressive. we move on to the next guy on this list at the number 12 spot. I'm going to put Marty Fake Newsman, man. I'm going to put Kamaru Usman here at the number 12 spot. I originally had him in the top 10 too as well. And he's only lost, in my opinion, I think that the Khamzat Chimaev fight was a draw. I don't think that he lost that fight. Yeah, one of the rounds was a 10-8 for Khamzat, but then the other 2 rounds went to Usman. You know what I'm saying? So I like the only guy that Kamaru Usman is, as ironic and as funny as it is, the only guy that Marty Fake Newsman has ever lost to in his UFC career is Mumblemouth Leon Scott. Leon Mumblemouth Scott, as Bedtime MMA calls him. But Kamaru Usman's wins in his career are not very good, man. It's not top 10 material. 2 title defenses, 2 of his 5 title defenses came against Jorge Chinny Man Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal as 2 of your title defenses, man. I don't like that. And then Gilbert Burns, Chinny Man Gilbert Burns is one of them. Gilbert Burns is low-key a dog, though, and he was hurting Usman in the fight. And that's a different Gilbert Burns that Usman was fighting. But yeah, Gilbert Burns has a title defense when you got, JDM defending against Makhachev. And, Makhachev beating JDM for the welterweight title. So it's different times in welterweight nowadays. And I don't think that the competition that Usman was facing stacks up to the welterweight division of nowadays. Like Usman versus Prates, I don't know how that one goes, man. I don't know, man. Usman's a tough guy. And Prates, he could finish Prates. We've never really seen Prates put through the fire with a really dangerous opponent who could finish him. JDM doesn't really have a finishing threat before you say anything. But, Usman has good contender wins too, like really underrated contender wins. Damian Maia, decent contender win. Rafael Dos Anjos, pretty good contender win as well. Joaquin Buckley, it's an okay contender win. He was able to out-grapple him completely, but in the 5th round kind of looked like a fish out of water on the feet. He is washed nowadays, though, on the feet. Tyron Woodley as a title win, man. Like that's the guy that you take the belt off of. Tyron Woodley. He's just not very good, man. And then Colby Covington had 2 dogfights with Colby Covington. First one, Colby Covington was probably winning. Not winning. No, it was tied. I think it was tied. But then Marty Fake Newsman gets Colby Covington out of there in the 5th round. But yeah, I mean, I think that Kamaru Usman's. I think that his resume is overrated, man. I think that a lot of these carry him, and I'd say one of the better performances of his career is that short notice fight with Khamzat Chimaev, who's very good, by the way. Khamzat Chimaev is a really skilled fighter, and he drew with him. I think that he drew with Khamzat Chimaev, and I think that it was a pretty clear draw. It was whatever round Khamzat took. I think it was round 1 probably. Yeah, 10-8 round for Khamzat there, and then the other 2 rounds went to Usman, in my opinion. So I think that that's probably one of the better performances of Usman's career. And I think some of these contender wins, man, and the Colby Covington wins, I think that the number one thing holding up Usman's resume and his legacy is the Colby Covington wins. So being heavy on a Colby Covington win and being reliant on that and a draw with Khamzat Chimaev is not a good look, man. And I think another one of the things that carries him is him having 5 defenses at welterweight and reigning for 3 years. So that's another thing. But yeah, I have Kamaru Usman at number 12. We're going to move on to the number 11 spot. Some people may be upset with this placing as well, but I think that it's a perfect placement for Daniel Cormier. I'm going to put DC at the number 11 spot. As much as I hate him on commentary, man, is he a sick fighter, and I miss watching him fight. I watched him fight a few times. I only started watching the UFC like 3 years ago, but continuously. Like I only started paying attention to the UFC back then. But I would watch DC fights. I would watch the Jones DC. I would watch the Stipe in DC. I watched Derek Lewis versus DC, all that. DC was a very good fighter in his prime, man. He beat Stipe Miocic the first time, and that's how he got the heavyweight belt. But it was a controversial win, man. He eye pokes him and then immediately after hits him with an overhand and slumps Stipe out cold. So like in the Stipe trilogy, there was a lot of eye pokes on both sides. DC was honestly probably the victim of the eye pokes, though. Like, as you could see in the 3rd fight, his eye was really busted up from eye pokes from Stipe. And then, you know, the Rumble Johnson fight. I think Rumble Johnson's an underrated win too, both on his and Jones's resumes. He beat Rumble Johnson twice. He beat Alexander Gustafsson, which is a mid-win. I think Alexander Gustafsson, for both him and Jones, is a very overrated win. I think Alexander Gustafsson is a super overrated win. He was never really that good, and he's only deemed that good because, Jones had to bite down in his mouthpiece and grit through the fight in round 5, and he didn't even train. That's what Joe Rogan says. He didn't train for that fight, even though he was gritting down on his mouthpiece and pushing through for a 5th round against Alexander Gustafsson. But that's the only reason why Alexander Gustafsson's considered a good fighter, is because he made it competitive with Jones in the first fight. So that's why Gustafsson's so hyped up, and he was really not all that good in his prime, man. And then you got Volkan Oezdemir, underrated win. He's getting wins nowadays at light heavyweight too. Derek Lewis, it's over once you get Derek Lewis to the ground. Not one of his best wins, but I just kind of had to throw that in there. And then Dan Henderson, prime Dan Henderson, not a bad win at all. Yeah, I mean, and then his losses, his only losses, and this is why I think he's really up there, is because he's never lost to anybody besides the GOAT heavyweight, Stipe Miocic, spoiler alert, and one of the GOATs. Maybe not. Hey, you'll see where I have him on this list. You'll see where I have Jones on this list. But John Jones in the first fight, I'm not going to count the second fight. John Jones is a cheating bitch. Had to stick steroids up his ass to try to beat someone who's 8 years older than him and looks like an absolute blob. But, you know, then the Stipe Miocic fights, and a lot of those were based off the eye pokes, not the second one. But, yeah, I mean, Stipe Miocic and John Jones are the only fighters that DC's lost to in his MMA career, not just UFC career, his MMA career. He's 11-3 in the UFC, light heavyweight champion with 3 defenses, and then UFC heavyweight champion with a defense, and the defense came against Derek Lewis, to be fair. But that's a different Derek Lewis. It's a Derek Lewis that still quits when he's on the ground, but Derek Lewis is trying to hold his own on the feet at least. And I think that was Derek Lewis coming off a win against Ngannou and Volkov and stuff. But, yeah, there you go. I got DC at number 11. We're going to move on to the number 10 spot. I did say spoiler alert because I told you guys that I was going to be putting this guy ahead of DC just recently, and that's Stipe Miocic. I think that he cracks the top 10, man. Stipe Miocic, old man Stipe, he cracks the top 10. He is a very good fighter, and he's so underrated. He's so severely underrated, and he was done dirty, just like DC was. He was done dirty by the UFC. I mean, they just feed him to Jones, and they don't even give him a montage, but you give like Anthony Lionheart Smith a montage for not for not accepting an easy win and getting a belt off of John Jones's dirty illegal knee to the head or whatever. Well, yeah, illegal knee to the head. So, you know, like I don't understand that. I guess they didn't know that Stipe was going to retire ahead of time, but they probably should have known that. I don't know why they gave John Jones Stipe anyways. Stipe has the 2 wins over DC. Those are heavy on his legacy as well. DC's a really good win to have. For both fights, you know, he did eye poke DC in those fights too. I poked him really bad in the 3rd fight, and DC decided to continue and then got KO'd for it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, DC's disrespecting Tom Aspinall for not continuing when he gets almost eye gouged by Cyril Gane and can't see anything. When Daniel Cormier, he pushes through an eye poke and then he just gets KO'd for it. Like, Tom Aspinall's smart for not continuing when he can't see in both eyes. But, yeah, and then the Francis Ngannou win in the first fight is also heavy on his legacy, too. Don't get me wrong, a worse version of Francis Ngannou, less calculated. And I mean, I know Francis Ngannou is not supposed to be a calculated fighter, but he's a lot better at finding his shots nowadays. Like, even in his PFL fights, even in his MVP fights, he's a lot better at finding the shot and really finding your chin. And he wasn't able to do that against Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic was also able to completely out-wrestle him and beat him on the feet in moments too. Fabricio Verdum, underrated win. Alistair Overeem, when Alistair Overeem was in his prime. JDS 2, and this was a pretty close to prime JDS win too. And like when Stipe was in his prime, and then when JDS is in his prime, this is another win from Stipe. And then, not far removed from prime, Andrei Arlovsky. And Andrei Arlovsky was ranked in the heavyweight division and pretty solid in the heavyweight division for a decently long time. His losses, Stipe Miocic's losses, 3 of them have come outside of his prime. Stefan Struve, he was a youngin in the game. He was a tadpole. Same thing with JDS in his first fight. Both him and JDS were contenders, I believe, at the time. And yeah, I mean, JDS just beat him in that fight when he was pre-prime. John Jones, when Stipe was washed and old. Stipe was 42, and old man Stipe went out there trudging to fight John Jones, and was even then finding some shots and outboxing John Jones in moments on the feet. So, I mean, there you go. Those are 3 fights outside of his prime that he lost. And then he got the first fight against DC, got eye poked badly, and then KO'd right after it. So you could make excuses for him there, but at the same time, I do still think that DC probably would have won the first fight anyways. Francis Ngannou in the second fight, Stipe lands something, gets overzealous, gets excited, and then Francis Ngannou catches him on the way in and nastily puts him out by KO. Brutal KO there. 14-5 UFC record. UFC heavyweight champion with 3 defenses from 2016 2018, loses it to Stipe, gets it back, and then defends it again, or loses it to DC, and then gets back, defends it against DC, completes the trilogy. And yeah, I think that Stipe's easily the heavyweight GOAT. Yeah, there you go. We move on to the next fight, not next fight up the card. I was thinking we were doing the breakdowns video for a second. I'm on a bad brain fog. UFC White House has badly messed up my sleep. But we're going to move on to the next fighter on this GOAT list. And he just suffered a loss, but I'm still going to put him at number 9. I still think that he's really, really good. And his wins, his 3 good wins may just carry him, but we'll talk about that in a second. Ilia Topuria. I have Ilia Topuria at the number 9 spot. I still think that he's very good, and he's up there for sure. I did drop him. I had him close to top 5, I will admit, before this loss to Justin Gaethje. But I think that this loss is only going to make him stronger from here. And I think it's safe to say also, and correct me if I'm wrong, that 3 flatline KO wins in a row over Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira can put him above DC and Usman and Stipe's entire legacies. Actually, I'd say just DC and Usman. Above DC and Usman's entire legacies, because neither one of them had a win on the level of any of those 3. Like, neither DC nor Usman had a win on the level of Charles Oliveira, had a win on the level of Alexander Volkanovski, had a win on the level of Max Holloway. And yes, there are some asterisks next to those wins. Volkanovski, 4 months after being KO'd by Makhachev, still with a bit of a hurty arm coming off the couch. Max Holloway, who's badly dehydrated from bulking up to 155 and then dropping back down to 145 to fight Ilia Topuria for the title. And really the only one of those that doesn't have an asterisk next to it is Charles Oliveira. I can't really think of an excuse for Charles in that one. And neither do I want to, because Ilia Topuria is a sick fighter, man. Ilia Topuria is actually probably in my top 20 favorite fighters, too. I love watching Ilia Topuria. He's a sick fighter, sick dude. Yeah, I mean, and I thought, dude, this guy had the most aura in the UFC, of all time before this performance against Justin Gaethje. And I think that it's just, a lot of it was mental, man. Hokit getting in his head, his whole situation with his wife and his family and all that. I think a lot of that got in his head, but, and also, he was kind of relying off his belt and his champion mentality. Yeah, I'm the champion, because that's really all that he's, I don't want to be this guy, but that's all he's had going for him recently. He's relied off this championship mentality and, I'm a champion, I get to do whatever I want. I'm going to knock you out first round. What are you going to do about it? I'm just going to walk through you. 38-year-old man, Justin Gaethje, what are you going to do? You're just an old man. You're just an obstacle in my way for me to reach 3-belt triple champ status against Islam Makhachev, who I still think he would beat. I still think to this day that Ilia Topuria, as long as he hasn't taken too much damage in that Justin Gaethje fight to alter the course of his career, I still think that he would beat Islam Makhachev. However, I think that this is just a big lesson from God to Ilia Topuria to remember who he was, before the fame, before the money, before getting the girls in Miami, getting his wife from Miami and all that stuff. But You know, I think that this is a lesson from God to teach Ilya who he was before his championship, who he was before the fame, and the only person that he has to pick him up when his face is swollen and he can't see out of either one of his eyes and he's in terrible condition now is his brother. And I think that's beautiful. And anyways, we're talking about his legacy, man. I need to. I went off on a tangent there about his loss against Justin Gaethje, but you know, that's his only loss in his UFC career. Before this, he was 9-0. But to be honest, outside of these 3 wins right here, he doesn't have much substance. After that, it drops off to Yusuf Zalal on his debut, on Ilya's debut, and he beat him when he was sick. So, you know, he didn't win this one in emphatic fashion. It was a decision. Absolute beatdown, brutal beatdown of Josh Emmett, out of prime Josh Emmett, too. This one probably took years off of Josh Emmett's life. And then a win over Bryce Mitchell, underrated win. But Bryce Mitchell is a lot weaker at featherweight, and he still managed to take Ilya down. But yeah, you know, Ilya's legacy is very top heavy right now, and it would have been very much supported. And I probably would have had him as a top 5 fighter right now had he beat Justin Gaethje and had he been looking for the Islam Makhachev fight or the Arman Tsarukyan fight. And if he won that, and if he won the Arman Tsarukyan fight, he's still top 5. And if he beats Islam Makhachev, he's the GOAT. So now his career trajectory is a little different. I still think that he can reach GOAT status as long as he gets himself back on track, as long as he beats a contender and then gets the title again. And then maybe he can pursue the Makhachev fight if Makhachev's still around by then. But he's got a lot of work to do. He's a double champion still, defended the belt at featherweight. I'd say 3 greatest KO wins in a row, 3 greatest wins in a row period of all time by any fighter. And yeah, we're going to move on to the next fighter on this list, and it's his Georgian counterpart. And yes, I'm going to put him above Ilya. And I think that he deserves to be above Ilya. It's the bantamweight GOAT himself. And he might drop down this list as time goes on, too, because I do think that he's going to look washed in his next performance against against Petr Yan. It's Merab, by the way. Against Petr Yan, because his nose is messed up and because he's got a lot of scar tissue building on his face. Yeah, I got Merab at the number 8 spot. And he's got a crazy resume. In my opinion, Merab has one of the best resumes in UFC history. The only problem is he doesn't finish fights, man. Like, he's finished O'Malley once with a neck crank. He's finished Marlon Moraes, who doesn't finish Marlon Moraes, but he had to overcome adversity in his fight against Marlon Moraes and then ended up beating him by TKO. But Marlon Moraes is the guy you got to finish. And, I mean, Merab didn't even finish him in emphatic fashion, but to be fair, that's not his game. He did damage up Marlon Moraes on the feet pretty good, though. 2 great wins over O'Malley that are only aging better. Close fight against O'Malley in the first one, a lot closer than a lot of people like to admit. He beat O'Malley 3-2, clearly lost the 5th round and was hurt badly in the 5th round and was circling circling, going and holding his midsection because of teep that O'Malley landed on him. And then in the second fight, he wrote the wrongs. He outstruck O'Malley on the feet and then hit him with a nasty neck crank submission that ended up getting him out of there in the 3rd round. And his other wins are Petr Yan in the first fight, but as I've said it earlier in the video, it was an injured Petr Yan. Petr Yan with a broken hand, so he couldn't really throw much volume on the feet, and he couldn't really let loose on the feet. And then you got Jose Aldo, a different version of Jose Aldo, yes, but still, Jose Aldo was stuffing his takedowns. Merab was kind of just holding him against the fence. Jose Aldo was yawning while he was doing it. And yeah, it was like a boring performance for Merab where he kind of just held Aldo against the fence and kneed the thigh, tried to take him down, couldn't take him down. I don't think Merab landed a single takedown on Aldo. I think he was like 0 for 13 on takedowns in that fight, which is crazy to think about. But regardless, he beat Aldo. He outstruck Aldo in that fight, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, he beat Corey Sandhagen, almost finished him by KO in the 2nd round of that fight too. It was an entertaining fight up until the end of the 2nd round, and then from there Merab just started dragging him down and going hey, and then just like laying on top of him, not doing any damage, and then just lets him up and then just drags him back down. So not the funnest fighter to watch, but he's definitely good for sure. The Umar fight, Umar was winning it 2-0. Umar says he broke his hand. I think that's a lie. I'm not going to lie. I think that was probably an excuse for Umar to gas out and lose the last 3 rounds to Merab. Merab with a legendary, historic championship comeback against Umar Nurmagomedov in their probably what's going to be their first of a few meetings in the UFC. Then he beat a washed Cejudo. And, Cejudo he's still good even though he's washed, but it's not the same Cejudo. And then I already talked about the Marlon Moraes win. Now, Merab's only losses in the UFC are his first 2 fights in the UFC, both lost. He lost both of them. Frankie Saenz, I don't even know who that is, and Ricky Simone, who's a tough customer anyways. But, yeah, I mean, he lost both of these fights. I believe both by decision. I don't think he got finished in either one of them, did he? He might have got finished. I think he could. Didn't he get submitted by Ricky Simone? Did he get finished by Ricky Simone? I think he might have. Yeah, I think he was like trying to dog out a guillotine against Ricky Simone or something. And he was like pumping his legs, and he was like out or something. I forget though, but yeah, I think he was trying to dog out a submission against Ricky Simone or something. But yeah, both losses, first 2 fights in the UFC when he was young, and then he just recently lost to Petr Yan. Had he beat Petr Yan in the second fight, I would probably have Merab above the next guys on this list, at least 2 of them. Maybe at number 6. I would probably have Merab at number 6, maybe even at number 5. Yeah, I would maybe even have Merab inside the top 5 had he beat Petr Yan, but he didn't. I think that Merab's still the bantamweight GOAT. And yeah, there you go. We're going to move on to the next fighter on this list. Another fighter from the Caucasus regions. And I think that some people put him in the top 5. Some people think he's the GOAT because, never bled. And spoiler alert, it's Khabib. I'm going to put Khabib at number 7. I don't think that he's top 5. I don't think that he's above the next guy even that I'm going to put on this list. But regardless, he is good, and he has lost. I forget. He did lose to Glenson Tebow. I'm not going to forget about that. To be fair, this was Khabib, whatever, however you say it, before his prime. Oh shoot, I didn't even put Khabib in the middle. Didn't even put him in the middle. Here, I'm gonna move this around for you guys. Yeah, I'm sure you guys can see everything, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this was Khabib before his prime when he lost to Glenson Tebow here. But regardless, he did lose. He's not undefeated. He has never bled though. Khabib has never bled in the UFC, and that's super impressive. He's really good at nullifying his opponent's strategies and fights. Holy shit, what a burp. But his opponents weren't the best. Like, when you look at who Charles Oliveira's been fighting and you look at who Khabib's been fighting, Khabib didn't take the biggest challenges that were there. Like, he didn't take the challenge against... He didn't fight Tony Ferguson. I think Khabib would have won that fight, don't get me wrong, but he didn't fight prime Tony Ferguson, He didn't fight prime Charles Oliveira when Oliveira came around, like, I think like 8 pay-per-views after Khabib retired, Oliveira came around. And that's when you had the vacant belt on the line with Oliveira and Chandler. And, dude, Khabib didn't even stick around to see or to fight Oliveira, which was a tougher challenge than Gaethje at the time, a tougher challenge than Poirier, a tougher challenge than an unfocused McGregor. And don't get me wrong, McGregor was actually doing well for himself in that fight. And I think we would have been looking at a different story had we had the McGregor that fought Alvarez versus the Khabib that fought Ali Iaquinta, whatever it was, Ali Iaquinta, that's how you say his name. But I don't have Ali Iaquinta in one of Khabib's best wins because he's not one of Khabib's best wins. He was a short notice opponent that filled in for Holloway because Holloway pulled out of the fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, Khabib didn't duck Holloway. Holloway just, like, he couldn't show up and he was injured. I forget what the injury was, but Khabib's got good wins regardless. McGregor, not far removed from his prime, not a focused McGregor, not the best version of McGregor for sure, but still a decent version of McGregor that's walking forward at him and landing good shots. Probably won the 3rd round. Khabib did lose a round. I hate when people say, "Oh, he never lost a round." He lost the 3rd round to McGregor pretty handily. And yeah, he beat McGregor. Beat Poirier, beat Gaethje. He submitted all of those guys, and then he beat RDA and Edson Barboza, which are decent contender wins as well. Khabib is not, like, the other thing about Khabib's resume is he's not very dense in contender wins too, so that takes away from it. But regardless, Khabib, very good fighter. 29-0, I think probably should be 28-1 because he lost to Gleason Tebow. But I'm not going to hold that much against him. You could just say he's 29-0 because who cares about Gleison Tibau anyways? He got knocked out by Makhachev. But yeah, there you go. On Khabib's all's account, he beat Gleison Tibau anyways. There you go. We move on to the next guy on the list. And dude, I'm going to put this guy at number 6. Even though he just lost, I don't think that takes away much from his accomplishments. And I did put him below Khabib and below Merab for a second on the list. And then I thought, wait a second, hold on. I look at his accomplishments again, I look at the names that he's beat. And I look at the names Khabib's beat, and I look at the names Merab's beat. And I'm like, okay, I'd say that Alex Pereira is still firmly number 6. I'd say still that Alex Pereira is number 6 all time. And he's got a 10-3 UFC record. And he came into the UFC, I believe, in 2021. And it only took him 4 fights to get a title shot in the middleweight division. And partially because the only reason he came to the UFC was because Adesanya was shit-talking him. And then he got to the title, and he fought Adesanya, major rivalry, great for the sport, elevated the sport a lot, and elevated Pereira and Adesanya's careers for sure, and their star powers. And I already talked about the first fight between them. I forgot to put Israel Adesanya 2. Yeah, Adesanya 2. But yeah, in the first fight, Alex Pereira was losing at the end of the first round. He got wobbled badly by Adesanya, saved by the bell. As the fight went on, Pereira probably only won 1 round. I forget which one it was. But there was a round that Pereira took him down in, like at the very end of the round, and that's the round that Pereira won. But in the start, I think in the start to middle in the 5th round, Alex Pereira hits Adesanya with a nasty leg kick that drops him, and then he starts teeing off on him against the fence, rocks him with a big left uppercut / hook, and then that's the beginning of the end. And then that's when Adesanya gets standing KO'd. And before that, Alex Pereira had his contender wins. He beat 2 other, I think it was 2 other unranked guys that Alex Pereira beat before getting his shot to number 4 in the division, Sean Strickland, who he put out pretty easily in the first round. Fights Adesanya, did what I just told you he did. Then he fights Adesanya in a rematch, and he loses that one. He was winning that fight. Adesanya was winning the first fight, but then Pereira was winning the second fight, and then he ends up getting caught while Adesanya's playing possum up against the cage. And so that was the first real loss of Alex Pereira's UFC career. And then he rebuilds himself, goes up to light heavyweight because he can't make the weight anymore at middleweight. I can already feel the Rogan jokes coming from here. I can smell them in the comments. But he goes up to light heavyweight, fights a really tough guy in Jan Blachowicz, a really tough out to fight. Ends up winning a split decision, pretty clear 29-28 in my opinion. But he did struggle a little bit against Jan Blachowicz. Regardless, though, in his next fight was the title fight, vacant belt on the line against Yuri Prochazka, and he wins in a round 2 TKO. Hits him in the side of the head, not the back of the head, Cyril Gane, on the side of the head in the second round as Prochazka was trying to shoot on him, and yeah, he gets him out of there. He gets him out of there with a ground and pound TKO. I'm pretty sure, he dropped him with an uppercut right before that. I feel like he did. I don't know. I'm forgetting the first Yuri fight for some reason. And then in his next fight, he drops Jamal Hill after waving off Herb Dean. Now he obviously has a conflict with Herb Dean, but he's actually taken legal action against him. If you guys want me to make a video about that, I can. But yeah. And then, he waves off Herb Dean after Jamal Hill kicks him in the nuts. And then immediately after that, he catches Jamal Hill. You got caught. I got dominated. And then he puts him out in the first round on one of the biggest cards of all time. And then UFC 303, he fills in for Conor McGregor pulling out of the fight against Michael Chandler. And he fills in for Conor McGregor in the main event slot against Yuri Prochazka. I was about to say against Michael Chandler. Conor McGregor, you got to come back and fight somebody. Anyways, yeah, and then he beats Yuri Prochazka at the end of the first round, he catches him with a nasty left hook. And then at the start of the second round, nasty question mark kick, puts out Yuri Prochazka cold, ground and pound follow-up shots. And yeah, at the time, Yuri Prochazka was his only loss in his UFC career was Alex Pereira, and he lost to Olberg. No. Dude, why didn't you just finish him with blind kicks? All right, I don't even want to go back to that. I don't want to be negative for the rest of the video. But then, he gets a very underrated win. My nose is very itchy right now. Then he gets a very underrated win against Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree is a tough out. You really got to finish him. He kind of beats himself sometimes the way that he gasses out. But Alex Pereira was able to break him down with calf kicks, with left hooks, with his jab. He was able to break him down, took him into round 4, bloodied him up badly, and finished him at the end of round 4. Underrated win there from Pereira. And then he loses to Ankalaev while injured. I think he said he broke his hand or something before the fight. And he was injured in the Ankalaev fight for sure in the first time. So valid excuse there, in my opinion. And then he goes out there in the second fight, forward foot pressure. And he goes for the finish at the start, gambles, throws his gas tank out the window, and lands a clobbering right on Ankalaev's chin, and not drops him, but he panics Ankalaev, he wobbles Ankalaev. Ankalaev shoots a panic takedown, and immediately Pereira gets a ground and pound, 12-6 elbows to the body, to the side of the head, legal 12-6 elbows, Ciryl Gane. And then, speaking of that, in the next fight of Alex Pereira's career, which just happened, he goes against Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl Gane beats him. Yeah, he dropped him with a jab. He was going to get him out of there. But I think the major factor to what contributed to the how Alex Pereira wasn't able to recover and how he got on the feet and he was so whoa was because of the 10 illegal back of the head shots, the illegal 12-6 back of the head shots that Gane was intentionally looking at the back of Alex Pereira's head and hitting them, going, oh, back of the head, bang, bang, bang. And he does that to Tai Tuivasa. Gane's just a dirty cheat, man. I hate Gane. A terrible person. Hope he goes to prison. All right, there you go. We move on. I had to get the Gane rant in. We move on to the top 5. Now, this is the end. This is what we've all been waiting for. The top 5 of my GOAT list. Who am I going to put here? Now it's obvious. I feel like it's obvious to some of you guys who's going to be in my top 5. But to start it off, my number 5 spot, it's just about the order. It's just about the order of where I put these guys. At the number 5 spot, I'm going to put Demetrious Johnson, the flyweight GOAT, Mighty Mouse. I think that he's number 5. And his only loss in the UFC, in my opinion, is Dominic Cruz. And that was, he's a very small guy. He went up to bantamweight to fight Dominic Cruz to challenge for the bantamweight belt before he even tried to fight for the flyweight belt too. Yeah, that was in 2012, so in the dinosaur ages, when Demetrious Johnson was I think he was 25 in that fight or something. I forget. I think he was 25 or 24 or something like that in that fight with Dominic Cruz. He was super small guy too. Mighty Mouse, for a reason, he's only 5'2", and he's able to style on opponents like this. He's able to get these dynamic submissions, to get knockout finishes. Just to be a great fighter, and he's so well-rounded, and he's so sharp, and he beats opponents that are bigger than him as well. You know what I'm saying? He beats opponents that are way bigger in stature, have way bigger reach, should win on paper, but he always beat them because he has got he's got serious fight IQ, man, and he shows that in his void breakdowns in his YouTube videos. He's got a mind like no other for the game of MMA. And he's just a great fighter and a great mind of MMA. He beat Henry Cejudo in the first fight by KO. In the second fight against Henry Cejudo showed a lot of improvements, and DJ was improved as well, so that shows how good Henry Cejudo is. And I did leave him out of the top 25, but he's an honorable mention, trust me. But this fight ended up going to Henry Cejudo on the scorecards, which I completely disagree with. I think DJ won this fight 3-2. I think you could argue 4-1, to be honest. I think you could argue that Henry Cejudo lost this fight 4-1 to DJ, to be honest. There was only one clear round that went to Henry Cejudo, and I think it was round 4. If I were to guess, I watched the fight 2 weeks ago, but I think it was only round 4 that went to Henry Cejudo, and you can argue round 5, but probably round 5, honestly. But yeah, and then he beat prime Joseph Benavidez, a better Benavidez than Figueiredo beat, by the way, and that I believe Moreno beat. He beat a prime Benavidez twice. One of them by knockout. One of them by a very close split decision, and that's how he won the belt. Kyoji Horiguchi by a last-minute armbar, literally with 4:59 elapsed in round 5. He beat Kyoji Horiguchi with a submission, and that win is aging better and better and better over time. Kyoji Horiguchi's only loss in the UFC. came to Demetrius Johnson. Isn't that crazy? Not trying to jinx anything because I want the big gooch to beat Manel Kopp, the gyno little freak, on Saturday. And we'll drop a predictions video today or tomorrow. So yeah, you know, he beat Kyoji Horiguchi. That win is only aging better. Tim Elliott, he's still a dog out there. I believe he finished Tim Elliott in some way, didn't he? Or did he just decision him? I don't even remember. And then DJ also fought John Dodson twice. John Dodson dropped him. You know, John Dodson was a tough out for DJ. John Dodson's an underrated fighter himself, even though he has a pretty bad record, you know. And then Ray Borg, obviously the flashy armbar, the suplex into an armbar, the flying armbar. Probably, you know, like the sickest highlight finish of DJ's career. And, you know, he defended his flyweight championship 12 times. I know it's technically 11, but I'm going to say 12 times because of the Cejudo robbery. And I think that was a complete robbery. We're scoring fights based on damage, guys. DJ won that second fight for sure. His only real losses to Dominic Cruz. We're not going to count one championship and all that stuff. DJ, very good fighter, very good UFC fighter. There you go. We move on to the number 4 spot. And this is up for grabs. This was up for grabs. I was thinking, who's got better wins? This guy, this guy, this guy, or this guy. If you guys know ball, you pretty much know who my top 4 are going to be at this point. But yeah, I was thinking, You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the 4 guys. Who has the best wins and who has the least significant wins out of all of them? And I was thinking of the guy who's fought the least recently and who's fought in a different era of MMA, and that's GSP, man. I love GSP, man. Not one of my favorite fighters, but he's and look at how much of a dinosaur age this guy was fighting in, man. This is not even a quality picture of him that I could find, a quality fighter portrait. But just look at the accomplishments, man. He was a welterweight champion in 2006, then he got fluked by Matt Serra. And then he won it right back, avenged his loss against Matt Serra, finished him as well. And then he had 10 defenses after that, reigned as a welterweight champion for 6 years, close to Anderson Silva's record of reigning as a champion for 7 years. And he defended the belt 10 times. And his last defense was a controversial one against Johnny Hendricks. But I do think that he won that fight pretty clearly. A lot of people say, oh, it was a robbery. GSP lost that fight. Dana White said that. Dana White criticized GSP. GSP went out of the UFC. I forget. Did he officially retire after that? I think he did. Yeah, I think he did officially retire after that. And then he comes back 4 years later, wants to win the middleweight championship, fights Michael Bisping. Takes a championship from Michael Bisping. And then he was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker after that. He says, no, the time's yours. He does. He does what a man would do, unlike Jones, and he gives the interim champion Robert Whittaker. He gives him his opportunity and says, "Okay, I think that I'm gonna risk my legacy with this fight." And he just goes out. He goes out with a win, goes out with a bang, and leaves Robert Whittaker with his own story. So GSP could have fought Robert Whittaker. I think honestly could have won that fight. Looking back at it, because Bobby Knuckles is quite chinny, and I think that GSP could counter wrestle him quite well as well. But yeah, I mean, looking back at GSP's wins, he beat Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz is an underrated win. Johnny Hendricks, not such a good win, and also a very close fight. GSP got bloodied up in that fight. 2 wins over Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes is super underrated. Good wins there. Matt Hughes is a much better win than like Jose Aldo's wins over Chad Mendes, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? The BJ Penn wins are they're kind of overrated, but this was when BJ Penn was actually low-key a marauder and not on like a 7-fight KO streak of losing. Carlos Condit is probably I think Carlos Condit is GSP's most underrated win. Carlos Condit was a marauder low-key back in the day. Matt Serra too, he avenged his loss over Matt Serra. Michael Bisping, and he actually got fluked by Matt Serra. It's not like where Topuria goes out there and like low-key gets the shit beat out of him by Justin Gaethje. Like, Matt Serra genuinely just fluked GSP the first time. Beats Michael Bisping, not the greatest win, but he won the middleweight championship off of it. And then Jake Shields, a little underrated win that I tried to throw in there as well. Yeah, I'd say GSP. I'm gonna put him at number 4. Great wrestling, great striking. Overall, great fighter. I think that this is one of the few champions that would translate into today's world of MMA. I think that like in the welterweight division, I think that GSP in today's day in MMA definitely ranks inside the top 5. Probably beats JDM. I'd say, I don't know, I think Morales is too big. I think Pratis might be low-key too big for him. But GSP could still take down Pratis and sub him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, GSP is not really a sub type of guy. You know what I'm saying? But GSP could definitely still beat Pratis, but I don't know if he would have an answer for Pratis' striking. He would really have to take him down. But GSP has really good wrestling. And then Makhachev, I do think he loses to Makhachev. But yeah, there you go. That's my rating for GSP. We're going to move on to the top 3. The number 3 spot. Man, you know who I'm going to put right here? Man, you know, mate. It's just, it's good stuff. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, we cooking with Volk, cooking with bloody Volk, mate. We're going to put Volk at the number 3 spot. Much deserved. The featherweight GOAT. One of my favorite fighters. We all love Volk. Volk's probably, dude, low-key, Volk's got to be like top 30 people of all time. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, just how can you not love Volk, man? You know what I'm saying? Like everything about, I'm gonna glaze him too much, but everything about Volk just low-key makes me happy, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like everything about guys like MVP, like Michael Venom Page, things like dirty cheats like Cyril Gane, who are try to murder people in the cage with back of the head shots. Like those people just make me really mad and ruin my day. But then I see a guy like Volk, man, and everything inside me, it sounds weird, but bro, like Volk is just the GOAT, man. Everything inside me, it just makes me so happy when I see Volk. And when I see Volk like cooking and when he's like winning fights, it's just like, yeah, let's go, Volk. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean by that? Anyways, let me stop glazing Volk for a second. Volk is a super good fighter. And just as I say, let me stop glazing him, I'm going to glaze him more. But this is deserved glaze. This is glaze that is backed up by his performances inside the UFC octagon. He's an insanely amazing fighter. Volk is an amazing fighter, one of the greatest of all time, no doubt about it. The only reason he's not higher up on the list is because of his losses to Islam Makhachev and to Ilia Topuria, who are very, very good fighters themselves. And his only losses are to some of the most skilled fighters of all time, Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. Those guys are definitely in the top 5 most skilled fighters of all time, by the way. Like, for sure, in my opinion. And I used to think that Ilya had a high fight IQ, but not anymore after the Justin Gaethje performance. Like, I mean, come on, you have him hurt to the body, you can't finish him. Anyway, we're going to talk about Volk here. We're going to glaze Volk now. 3 wins over Max Holloway. I think that's absolutely crazy. That's a crazy stat. 3 wins over Max Holloway, who I have number 14 all time. You could argue that he's higher up on the list. You could argue that he's above Usman. You could argue that he's above Oliveira, even though Oliveira beat him. He probably has better wins than Oliveira. I just think, dude, 3 wins over Max Holloway is just crazy, and it's such an overlooked stat because you look at all those fights, and yes, the second fight was close, but he definitively won it and came back down 2-0 and rallied and won the last 3 rounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, Volk is that guy, and he beat Max Holloway clearly, in my opinion, 3 times, and dominated him in the 3rd fight, which is when Max Holloway was the best out of all 3 of those fights. Then he beats Diego Lopez twice. And you look at every other fight in Diego Lopez's career in the featherweight division, and he just looks better and better and better. And Diego Lopez, yes, he dropped Volk in both fights, but Volk was able to recover. Dude, Steve Garcia wasn't able to recover from any of the shots that Diego Lopez hit him with. And Steve Garcia has a crazy chin, and Volk has a weaker chin. He just recovers really well, gets right back up. He grits through it, grits through his pain. He's got crazy recovery. And then he's super skilled, and I talked about it in one of my recent tier list videos as well. He's just jabbing on the outside, low kick, circle this way, circle that way, got super great fight IQ. Along with DJ and along with Jones, as much as I hate him, he's got one of the highest fight IQs in MMA history as well. Volk is a really, really smart dude on and out of the octagon, in and out of the octagon. I almost said on and off the court. In and out of the octagon. Volk is a very, very smart dude. And, you know, besides the wins over Max Holloway and the 2 wins over Diego Lopez, he's beat Jose Aldo, one of the best featherweights of all time, in my top 25 all time, number 21. You could put him in the top 22. You could put him above Jan and Izzy if you really want to. I don't think he is, though, in my personal opinion. A win over Chad Mendes, kind of overrated. Got dropped by Chad Mendes, but he still won, finished him. Brian Ortega, dominated Brian Ortega, finished TKZ, finished Yair Rodriguez. And then his only losses, when you look at them, are to Islam Makhachev in the first fight, lost 3-2, very close fight. I scored it for Islam personally. And then the second fight, I only really count this as like half a loss for Volk, because being the badass that Volk is, on short notice, he's off the couch on a week's notice. Oliveira pulls out of the rematch with Islam Makhachev in Abu Dhabi, and Volk goes to enemy territory with a broken arm off the couch. One of the worst weight cuts of his life. He's super out of shape, looks fat. And he goes to Abu Dhabi, makes the weight, gets on the scale, and goes out there to fight Islam Makhachev and gets KO in the first round with a head kick. And Makhachev ain't usually KOing people, you know what I'm saying? And that kind of looked like a weak head kick to me, and it somehow landed on Volk. Volk didn't look like himself in that fight because he wasn't. And he lost that fight by KO. So I only count that as really half a loss for Volk. And then he just gets, next fight he goes into, he gets chinned by Ilia Topuria. And people say, oh, you know, like they're trying to take the win away from Topuria with asterisks. Oh, you know, maybe like Volk is coming off the KO loss to Makhachev, and I I agree with that to some degree, but you gotta keep in mind that this was number one, this is prime Volk, and number two, Volk won the first round against Ilia. Volk did out tit for tat Ilia in the first round, and he won the first round, and then Ilia smirks and he goes, "Mi momento ha llegado pronto." My moment is coming soon. And then he hits him with the overhand of doom as Volk is circling to his power side, which Volk likes to do nowadays. He did that to Diego Lopez in the second fight too, and he usually tends to do better when he's circling the power side, now that I think about it, as long as he's going against an orthodox striker. But you know, I feel like Ilia Topuria is putting almost anyone out with that, except for Justin Gaethje, I guess. But he didn't even land that shot against Justin Gaethje, and that probably would have at least wobbled him. But Volk's got a weaker chin. Any version of Volk is going out to that shot from Ilia. But I mean, yeah, you know, he's had 5 defenses in his featherweight champion reign from 2019 to 2024. 5 years, 5 defenses. You know, I thought he was more active than that, but you know, you gotta factor in the title win. He beat Max Holloway to get the title. First fight of their trilogy. Pretty handily beat him in that one, 49-46. And then, you know, after his reign's over and after it's ended by Ilia Topuria, he takes some time off, comes back, fights Diego Lopez, a dangerous prospect in the division. Everybody was counting him out. Not everybody, but a lot of people were counting him out. And he wins it, and then he rematches Diego Lopez for some reason. And he wins that one too, despite getting dropped. And he wins that one, I think, 49-46. You could say 50-45 even. Some people, I mean, I don't know. I feel like 50-45 is too harsh. So I would definitely say 49-46. He won the second fight as well. And 49-46, he won the first fight too, even though he took more damage in the first fight. So 2 featherweight reigns. He's 37 and he's still kicking. Number 2 pound for pound. Was number 1 pound for pound at one point too, I believe, right? Yeah, he was. Yeah, there you go. I have Volk at number 3. We move on to the next fighter that I'm going to put on this list. And it's between John Jones and Islam Makhachev. I've revealed them both to you guys. You guys thought I was gonna pull like Anthony Smith or Anshul Jabli out the bag, didn't you? It would have been a crafty move for me to do that. Now that I admit it. But we're gonna keep it serious tone of this video. I was like trying to debate between the two, because you know, Jones on one hand doesn't have as good of wins as Makhachev. You know, doesn't have that clean of a double champ status. You know, like Makhachev actually beat the champ, whereas Jones moved up, you know, quick, 5 weeks notice. You know, Ngannou's just left the UFC, quick, 5 weeks notice. You've been ducking Ngannou, now you get Gane. You know what I'm saying? And then Gane just like weirdly takes a dive and gives up in that fight. So, you know, that was always interesting to me, how Gane kind of just gave up in that fight. And now, like, every time Gane wins, it's being used as Jones upscale, and I really hate it. And it's like, oh, how good is John Jones for beating Cyril Gane, huh? And it's just so fucking annoying. Oh my gosh, some people actually piss me off. But yeah. And I mean, then you look at like Islam Makhachev's loss to Adriano Martins, and you realize that oh, he was in his tadpole stage of his career. You know, he was a younger guy. And then you see John Jones's loss to Dominic Reyes. Yes, he did lose to Dominic Reyes, and then his other loss, DQ. Matt Hamill, you know, could have lost by DQ to Anthony Smith as well, but he's a Lionheart. So I'd say that, you know what, I'm going to put John Jones at number 2. And you know, the reason that I put him at number 2 is because, you know, his wins aren't as good as Islam Makhachev's. There are some wins that are aging well, though, if I'm going to be honest. There's the Daniel Cormier win, easy 48-47 win for John Jones. Yeah, I mean, the Daniel Cormier win, like, majorly boosts his resume. Great win from John Jones. We don't talk about the second fight, obviously, because, you know, he shoved PEDs in his ass and stuck needles in his butt just so he could, you know, dope and, you know, get all juiced up so he could fight Daniel Cormier, who he was supposed to be anyways. And, you know... And then Daniel Cormier says in his interview, because he's a company guy and because the company wants to promote John Jones as the best, he's like, you know, PEDs don't make you head kick someone. Like, yeah, like, I mean, they kind of do, man, because they lock you in training, and they, you know, like the PEDs in training, like, they factor into training way more than they do, like, in the actual fight, you know what I'm saying? And the training, like, plays into the fight. So, you know, it's like this chain reaction. And yes, like, the PEDs to some degree do actually make you knock out DC by head kick. You know what I'm saying? Because they're called performance enhancing drugs for a reason. Because it doesn't just build your, you know, physical strength, it builds your mental confidence, because you know that you're taking something that you're not supposed to, that gives you an unfair advantage. So that's another factor. And then he beat Gustafsson twice. We're not counting. We're obviously not going to count his head kick win over DC. It wasn't even counted on the record anyways because he got busted for PEDs. Glover Teixeira is a win that aged really well on John Jones's resume. Glover Teixeira became the champ after John Jones left the light heavyweight division. That one actually aged well, but the Teixeira that he fought was, I think, a lot worse than the Teixeira that won the title, despite Teixeira being 42 years old when he won the title. Then he beat Cyril Gane, another win that's aging really well, sadly. Gotta hate it. And, I mean, like, the only other guy that Gane's lost to is Ngannou. But then also you see, like, the back of the head shots and, like, the eye poke over Aspinall, and Aspinall is just starting to heat up. Like, Aspinall was literally doing better than Pereira, who I have number 6 all time, and Aspinall was just, like, spinning around. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, like... he was just like stupid maxing with the striking on the outside. But anyways, you know, then you got Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Mauricio Shogun Rua, and then Vitor Belfort. You know, just a bunch of just basically a bunch of unks. And then you got the loss to Dominic Reyes. Yes, he lost to Dominic Reyes. He clearly lost rounds 1, 2, and 3, built himself back up in rounds 4 and 5. Yes, round 3 was slightly close, but he did clearly lose that fight. And I can't believe that the judges had him winning that fight. I can't believe it. I can't believe not one judge had John Jones winning that fight. That's absolutely insane to me. I watched the fight and it's just like, dude, John Jones easily won that. It's like, it's closer to a Reyes 49-46 than it is to a Jones 49-46, to be honest. And I think that Jones took 2 rounds off Reyes, in my opinion. But just that performance, I think, puts him for sure below Islam Makhachev for me. Lost to Matt Hamill by DQ. You know, that doesn't really count. You know, it just shows how much of a cheat he is. You know, like could have lost by DQ to Anthony Smith, and then Anthony Smith pulled through with his Lionheart. And, you know, like Anthony Smith, dude, low-key, Anthony Smith in fetal position was doing better than Cyril Gane was. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I think there's something fishy about the Gane fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, Anthony Smith curling up in fetal position was able to make it 5 rounds with Jones, and Gane got finished in the first round. There's something weird about that, you know what I'm saying? And like the finish looked weird and like geriatric and slow. Like Gane just kind of like put his head into a guillotine. It was weird, man. I mean, like from Jones, like you look at the accolades too, and that puts him number 2. I think he's above Volk because of the accolades and all that. 8 defenses at light heavyweight from 2011 2015. Gets the light heavyweight belt back after being stripped for PEDs, which is worthy. Defends it twice. One of them is a split decision win over a one-legged Thiago Santos. Just creme de la crop wins. He KO'd Gustafsson in the second fight when he was juiced. He didn't juice up in the first fight, but he didn't even train, right? He didn't even train, right, Jorgen? What are we talking about, man? And then the heavyweight, he was a heavyweight champion, beat Gon, fair enough. And then he beat Old Man Stipe, and I don't have that as one of his best wins. It's just not, because it's not. He invented the spinning back kick. All right, anyways, we're going to move on. You guys know where I have Islam Makhachev. I think Islam Makhachev's the GOAT. Listen, guys, listen. I don't like Islam Makhachev. I just want you guys to know that. I do not like Islam Makhachev. I hate his fighting style. Yes, he's funny with his brother. You just don't check the grappling. You don't check the grappling, but yeah, he's funny sometimes. But I don't like Islam Makhachev because of his fight style. I have no problem with him as a person, obviously. I have a problem with Cyril Gane as a person because he tries to kill people in the octagon, you know what I'm saying? But I have zero problems with Islam Makhachev as a person. He seems like a cool guy and stuff. But, boring fight style, laid on our boy JDM for 25 minutes. Absolutely inexcusable. Mark Goddard didn't even think to stand him up. Dude, what a dirty bastard. But yeah, regardless, dude, when you compare the wins of Islam Makhachev in this GOAT debate, when you compare the wins of Islam Makhachev to John Jones, it doesn't even look like much of a debate. A win over Charles Oliveira. I have him number 13 all time. We'll put that right here. Number 13 all time, Charles Oliveira. John Jones, win over Daniel Cormier, number 11 all time. Okay, fair enough. Now you got to win over Alexander Gustafsson twice. Let's look at Makhachev's next win in comparison, and I'm not going to count Volk 2, by the way. I am counting Volk 2 because it was still a win, it was still a good KO, but I'm not going to say this number this, number that. But I think that the first performance over Volk was a good performance for sure. Round 5, Volk had him on the ropes. If it would have went to round 6, who knows? Maybe we could have seen Makhachev finished. But Alexander Volkanovski, number 3 all time. A win over number 3 all time, I think, puts you on a big time pedestal. Then you look at Jones, Alexander Gustafsson. Where does he rank all time? I don't even think top 50, man. Glover Teixeira, yes, Glover Teixeira's top 50, I think. Glover Teixeira, top 50. Cyril Gane, probably top 50 at this point. Then you look at Dustin Poirier, number 24 all time. In my books, number 24 all time. I think definitely top 25 all time, Dustin Poirier. Jack Della Maddalena, champion. He beat a champion. And then you look at Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Shogun Rua, Vitor Belfort, all these champions of way back in the day, literally in the Stone Ages. Those are guys John Jones beaten. And JDM is way more talented than that. Then you got Dan Hooker. Yeah, I don't know about Dan Hooker, man. Dan Hooker's kind of an easy win there for Makhachev. Then Arman, and I low-key think Arman's top 35 all time. That's my hot take. Dude, Arman's got some good wins. Win over Oliveira puts him on a pedestal. Win over Gamrot, I'm counting that, even it is a robbery. I still think Arman gets beat by Ilias, but I think Arman beats Gaethje. I think it's a different stylistic matchup. But I just think that Makhachev wins are much more quality. You got the JDM win. JDM's the champion. The Arman win. The thing about Arman was this was Arman on his debut, and yes, he's gotten better with his striking, but Arman was still this kind of the same level grappler as he is now. And then you have Makhachev's only losses to Adriano Martins, where he just got caught when he was younger. And ever since then, he's really tightened up his striking defense. He looks really, really solid on the feet with his striking defense. He's got, some good jabs and good Soviet-style boxing himself, mixing in the leg kicks. He hurt JDM to the legs. Who doesn't at this point? Sadly. And then he's a double champion. He's a clear double champ. He beat both champions. He beat both champions to get his belts. Charles Oliveira, who's technically the champion despite missing weight. I don't know why they didn't count him as the champion at that point. He beat JDM, to get the belt off of JDM. Hasn't defended it yet, but is recently the Ian Gary fight was announced. If you guys want me to make a video on that, let me know. Yeah, and then he's defended the lightweight belt 4 times as well. So I'm not going to put a Renato Moicano. You know what? You know, if I have Dan Hooker here, I'm going to put Renato Moicano. Renato Moicano is a pretty underrated win, in my opinion, low-key. Even though Moicano wasn't ready for the fight. You know, if I'm putting Dan Hooker here, I'll put Renato Moicano at lightweight here as well, because that's another one of his wins. Not one of his... I mean, if I'm going to put Dan Hooker there, I guess I put Renato Moicano there. But honestly, neither one of these should count as like one of his best wins. But if I'm counting like Rashad Evans, Shogun Rua, Vitor Belfort, Lito Machina for John Jones, then I should be counting those guys for Islam Makhachev. But I'm not going to. I think Islam Makhachev is a clear-cut GOAT, you know, because of the competition that he's faced and how he's beat them. You know, finished Poirier with the Darce choke. KO'd Volk, low-key half a point. Won a decision over Volk despite finishing the fight weirdly. Submitting Charles Oliveira, you know, and knocking him down badly with a punch before. Laying on top of JDM, inexcusable. Decision over Arman, 3-round decision, and then only lost it to Adriano Martins when it was his second fight in the UFC. So I think that Islam Makhachev's the GOAT in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you guys like the GOAT video? This is my final tier list. This is my GOAT list. To summarize it, I'm not going to name all these names, but you can see right here. Let me know what you guys would have done better. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Follow my socials at the JJ MMA. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.